Vancouver Canucks was the star of the series. Kind of sums it up. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3, the game streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. Ian, I tried on Friday night.
Yeah, you tried your best.
I did my best. I guaranteed at the beginning of the third period that the Predators were going to lose. I was trying my hardest to get a second Jared Stillman jinx in there. Ian, go ahead and knock me for a guarantee. Go ahead and give me a little.
Okay, I'll put it on the list, yeah.
You give me another check mark there for getting a guarantee right for the Predators. But I was trying. And let me start off by saying this. First of all, we got a lot of Titans. We got a lot of Preds to get to today. But let's start with kind of the post-mortem of the Predators. Now, Andrew Burnett and Barry Trotz will talk tomorrow, and we'll kind of get where their head's at in all of this. They'll have a pretty good idea where a lot of it is. But let's start with where we stand as far as the Predators season is concerned. I'm sad that the 2024 Nashville Predators playoff run is over, because the 2024 portion of the Nashville Predators season was insanely fun, and this team was incredibly fun to root for. And at the end of the day, regardless of whether or not we're writers or columnists or talk show hosts or TV or whatever, and we're supposed to be neutral and no cheering in the press box and things like that, and I get it. At the end of the day, the reason that we all get into jobs like this is because we're fans. And that was a team that it was exciting and fun to be a fan of. I loved that Predators team. Like, when I think of the 2024 Predators, I will think fondly about that team. I didn't feel that way about the 22 Predators or the 21 Predators, although the 21 Predators had their moments. Certainly didn't feel that way about 19. 18 was about heartbreak. But this team, I loved this team. That said, the reason the Predators ended up not being cup contenders, and look, I got swept up during the season when they kept beating playoff teams, but the reason why the Predators aren't playing anymore is the same reason why they couldn't beat an average playoff team. Again, Vancouver's not an average team. They're an average playoff team with a third-string goalie. And it's because they didn't have good enough players. They couldn't get that little black puck into that little white net. And I watched it up close and personal on Friday. I thought the effort level was through the roof. I thought the commitment from the players, 10 out of 10. The execution was lacking, but at the end of the day, they just don't have a guy on this team that can go out and get a goal. The Boston Bruins have that. When their entire team was choking it away, down, up 3-1 against Toronto, and now all of a sudden it goes to overtime, and one lucky bounce could seal the deal, and David Pastrnak comes through. You don't have that player. That's the reality of the Predators. They don't have good enough players. Same reason why they didn't beat Pittsburgh in 2017. They didn't have good enough players to beat Crosby and Malkin and Kessel at that point in their careers. Same reason they lost in 18, 19, and 21. Though I'll give you, if you want to argue 18, that Pekka Rinne, really struggled in that playoff series. I'll give you that. But in 19, they didn't have good enough players to beat Dallas. And in 21, they certainly didn't have good enough players to beat Carolina. It's a recurring thing. Coming into the year, Barry Trotz told us to set the expectations low because he knew he didn't have a roster of players good enough to compete for the Cup. Then, because everything went right, they had the right chemistry, they had the right coach, they had the right attitude, they had the right leadership, because all those things fell into place perfectly, that team went on a heater. And it was hard to not believe when they kept beating real Cup contenders. Like, they kept beating Vegas and Winnipeg and Colorado and I'm like, this team's a Cup contender. But in the end, that's what it was. It was a heater for a bunch of guys who play the game the right way, who had better coaching than they've had before, and they all came together. But again, this team lacks the talent it takes to compete for the Cup. Now, that doesn't mean they couldn't have won this series. They easily could have won this series. They should have won this series. And I don't want to do this because you never know. But getting matched up against Edmonton in the second round, you really think that this team can go goal for goal with Draisaitl and McDavid and Hyman and that power play? Of course not. And again, kind of the difference here, because Edmonton does have the talent. So I don't really think that Vancouver had that kind of talent to win the Cup. And I don't know if Elias Pettersson had a bad series or he got exposed, but woof did he suck. But while this season was fun, the reality is the same. The Predators need to get better players. And the kind of players they need to get are very, very hard to find. And that is what is going to define whether or not the Barry Trotz administration is successful. Through year one, I don't think there's any way you could argue that this wasn't a rousing success. This team didn't expect to be in the playoffs. They made the playoffs. This team competed in the playoffs. But what's going to define whether or not the Barry Trotz administration gets the Predators to the promised land is whether or not they're going to be able to find, whether it's via the draft, trade market, free agency, or developing players they already have, that high-end elite talent. Whether or not Matthew Wood becomes a first-line goal scorer, Joakim Kimmel, the first-rounders they've got coming in the future, all the 3 second-rounders they have this year. You know, I told you when you traded away a second-round pick for Jeremy Lauzon, and I'm not here to knock Jeremy Lauzon, but I told you, when you traded away a second-rounder for Jeremy Lauzon, I'm like, that's Shea Weber or Roman Josi. You got 3 second-rounders this year. You go Shea Weber, Roman Josi, and Sebastian Aho with your 3 second-rounders this year. 4 years from now, Barry Trotz will be holding the cup over his head once again. But not this year. Because, again, what's plagued them in the past plagued them again. They have good players. They don't have great players. Ryan O'Reilly's a good player. He's not a great player. Philip Forsberg is a good player. He's not a great player. The one great player they have is Josi, and in this series, he wasn't great. And again, I believe to win a cup, you have to have that back line defenseman. You know, that Chris Letang type player. You got to have that number one defenseman. But I don't know if he can be your best player, right? Like, I don't know if you can win a cup with your best player being that number one defenseman. You know, Tampa won with Victor Hedman, but at the same time, they had Stamkos and Kucherov up front. Meanwhile, look at Colorado. They've got Makar, but at the same time, they've got McKinnon up front. So I know that what I'm saying is probably frustrating a lot of Predators fans because year after year after year, the Predators have gotten to the playoffs, and year after year after year, we emerge from the playoffs saying, you know what? The Predators need the big boy forward. We said it after Crosby and Malkin. We said it after Winnipeg. We certainly said it after that Dallas series where they were 0 of 15 on the power play. We said it after Carolina, and we're saying it now. This team needs that guy. The guy that can take the little black puck and put it in the little white net. And it is so much harder to find that guy than it is to just say you need that guy. But when you've got the best power play in the league, or at least the best coach for the power play in the league, because you certainly don't have the best power play in the league, when you have the best coach for the power play in the league, and you can't score on a 4-minute minor, that's concerning. You go 2 of whatever it was on the power play in this series, that's concerning. And so while Friday night, they should have won Friday night. Just like they should have won in Game 4, and they should have won probably in Game 1. But Friday night, they maxed out the credit card, man. They put the effort out there. The goaltending was phenomenal. They played as a team. You know, Juuso Parssinen gets put in the lineup, and he blocks shots. And, I mean, that team sacrificed every ounce of juice from that orange in order to try to win that game, and they still couldn't score. And I left that stadium on Friday night, and I said to people, I'm not mad about tonight. I'm mad about game 4. I'm not mad about game 6. I'm mad about game 4. But that doesn't change the big picture, which is there are clusters of teams when you get into the Stanley Cup playoffs. And while New York and Boston and Colorado and Dallas and Edmonton, while those teams look the part of a Stanley Cup contender, a true cup contender, you're probably more so with the Islanders. Probably more so with Winnipeg. Probably more so with those other teams that are good teams, but Winnipeg ain't getting over the top anytime soon. So as I tweeted out Friday night after they lost, the hunt for the big boy forward, and I capitalize H, and I capitalize B, and I capitalize the other B, and I capitalize the F. The hunt for the big boy forward continues for the Predators. Because, again, if they don't get it, then they will be in the exact same spot next year. And while, again, Barry Trotz and Andrew Burnett exceeded expectations, in my opinion, far exceeded expectations in year one, we're not going to feel the same way this time next year. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. So where do the Predators go from here? The first is the big boy forward. How do they find it? Well, you don't necessarily have to pick number 1 overall. We'll get to that coming up next. Stillman and Company, 615-737-1025. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game.
Andrew, both Ryan and Roman said they wish they had been able to kind of produce more, the guys that have been producing so well throughout the regular season. Is that something that needs to happen in order for you guys to win this series? Obviously not questioning any effort or anything like that, but from the big guys, do you need more production?
I thought they're outstanding. I mean, I thought they played great. Things didn't go in. And we needed a little bit of secondary help, and we didn't really get it. And it's hard to win, this time of year. And I'm sure they're saying the same thing over there. So it was one of those series. I mean, you've been lucky enough to be in nothing them. It might have been the tightest one. I've had some tight ones, but it just seems like it was just that balance every night, and it was going to go one way or the other. And credit to them. They got some high skill guys, and they made some plays. And
that was Andrew Burnett. Now, let me say this. Ryan O'Reilly said, I saw the tweet from Joe in the locker room after the game. He said, I played horrible this series. And I said, accountability. Thank you. Now, I didn't think O'Reilly was horrible, but I certainly wanted more. But again, he's right. It could have been a bounce here or there. You could have won the series, but it wouldn't have mattered because Vancouver's going to get their asses kicked by Edmonton. Let's just call it what it is. Ian, would you agree with that?
If I had to lean that way, probably so.
I think that Vancouver's going to get crushed one way or another. Here's the reality, and I said it in the first segment, I'll back it up. This team, the Barry Trotz administration, as you know, it is an administration that I am fond of right now. But the Barry Trotz administration has to find a big boy forward. The same thing David Poyle's administration, no disrespect to him, could never do. Philip Forsberg is not a big boy forward. He's a number 2. But the reality is they need an elite goal scorer, period. No way around it. No way to sugarcoat it. No way to fake it. Now, a lot of you are going to sit there and say, well, Jared, how are we, the Boohoo Tank crew, how are we going to do that when we're going to make the playoffs? And how do we do this if we're not picking number 1? Well, there's more than one way to skin this cat. Now, if you want McDavid, McKinnon, Matthews, you have to pick number 1. That's just the only way you get that guy is by picking number 1. But not every team that's still playing or is a cup contender that got bounced early, not every team got their best player by picking number 1. For instance, Florida's Matthew Tkachuk was acquired in a trade. So was Vegas's Jack Eichel. In fact, I remember when Jack Eichel wanted a trade, and I know he's listening. When Jack Eichel wanted a trade, and I said, why not? You need a big boy forward. And Adam Vingan got all pouty and was like, I am not going to discuss the Predators trading for Jack Eichel. Boy, I could use Jack Eichel on this team right now. Now, I don't know if they would have had the assets or if he would have wanted to come here, whatever. But again, you can acquire the big boy forward in a trade. Florida did. Vegas did. Boston's David Pastrnak. LA's Adrian Kempe. We're taking 25th and 29th in a draft that you took Kevin Fiala 11th in. David Pastrnak is still playing. And David Pasternak's team is still playing because of who? David Pastrnak. New York's Artemi Panarin, their best player, was free agent 1B in the summer of 2019. 1A was Matt Duchene. And then guys like Jason Robertson in Dallas and Sebastian Aho in Carolina, those guys are second-round picks. So, in my opinion, finding the big boy forward in the NHL is a lot like finding the quarterback in the NFL. If you get the number 1 pick in the right year, it's Joe Burrow. If you get the number 1 pick in the wrong year, it's Nico Hischier. It's just reality. You get it in the right year, you've got Connor Bedard. But that doesn't mean that you have to draft Joe Burrow in order to win or have to draft Sidney Crosby at the top of the draft. I mean, for me, the Predators are basically the Chicago Bears of the NHL. I've been alive now for 34 years. I'll be 35 in September. I think the best Chicago Bears quarterback of my lifetime might be Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh, Jay Cutler, Jim Miller. Woof. That's the Predators. I mean, I'm sorry, but, the Kostitsins and David Legwand, and no offense to Philip Forsberg, but he's not an elite goal scorer. Like, he's that you got to find this guy. But for everybody out there, it's not impossible to do it without picking number one. You just have to find the right guy. Instead of signing Duchesne, you have to sign Panarin. Now, not that Panarin wanted to come here, but I'm just using that as an example. Like, when you went on that crusade for Matt Duchesne, or you made that trade for Kyle Turris, you have to be on the right side of these transactions. You have to evaluate correctly. And if I have any major knock of the previous administration, and I know a lot of people are the same, but the guy at the top is not, it's that oftentimes they made deals hoping to land a high-end forward in which they came out purchasing a lemon. Turris, Duchesne, those are Granlund for Fiala. Like, those are the things. You can't have that anymore. If you're going to go, the Predators have the assets to go all in for probably one guy, maybe two, but really one. They have the assets. At this point in time, Matthew Tkachuk, when he wanted to trade out of Florida, he wasn't interested, reportedly, according to David Poyle. And I have no reason why he'd lie about it. He wasn't interested in coming to the Predators. Well, the Predators weren't really all that good, and they had kind of a veteran stuck in the mud kind of team. And even if the Predators did want to trade for him, I mean, Jonathan Huberdeau went in that trade, and they had nothing that could match up with that trade package, and so you're never going to get that guy. But now they have the assets because they can make trades involving young high-end prospects. They have the picks to be able to make trades. They have the cap space to be able to sign people. They've even got a guy in Evangelista who's a young up-and-coming forward that, again, you could move in the right deal. And they've got an offensive coach, and they've got no state income tax, and they've got a hopping building again, and they've got a fan base that's behind it and a new GM. And so it's not impossible. Because I know a lot of fans out there just kind of putting their head down saying, there's no way Jared will ever find a big boy forward. There's no way, there's no how, there's no. And I'm like, that is the job. That is what will define whether or not Barry Trotz is that guy. And you guys know I love Barry Trotz. I think the world of Barry Trotz. I think that every button he pushed this year, it seemed to be the right button. You could argue that some of the best skaters in that series, the most impactful skaters they had was Zucker and Beauvillier. The guys Barry Trotz at it. They've got pieces now, right? Like, Evangelista is a legitimate NHL top six forward, and he's going to get better and better. Then you hope, or I hope, that one of Tomasino, Parsonen, Kimmel, Svechkov, LaRue, Schaefer, one of those guys makes it. Is a true top six kind of guy. Then there's Matthew Wood and kind of the pipeline kids that are years away, we'll see. And maybe it's one of those guys that develops into the big boy forward. Maybe it's using one of those guys in a trade to get the big boy forward. But again, they've got the infrastructure. And I have long said this. Like, I've been on record saying this. I've said this to Barry Trotz. I said this to him in St. Louis the day that started the win streak. I go, this team is going to find that high-end forward. And this was when all those Saros rumors were going around about New Jersey and Ian, what was the guy? Dawson Mercer? Is that his name?
Yep.
Dawson Mercer and all those rumors going around. And I said, this is what's going to happen. The Predators are going to find the big boy forward because it's not going to be some guy on free agency. I'm sure you're looking up who the UFAs are and you see Sam Reinhart's name and you say, oh, yeah, Jared, we got to sign Sam Reinhart, which I'm not against. But that's not going to be that. It's going to be somebody somewhere who looks at their team and says, I'm not re-signing here. Johnny Hockey did it a couple years ago, and his team decided to keep him. Artemi Panarin did it a couple years ago, and his team decided to keep him. Matthew Tkachuk did it 2 years ago. His team decided to trade him. One of these teams going to have one of these big boy forwards that's going to say, I'm not re-signing here. Now the question is, Once that guy decides that and he hits the trade block, can Barry Trotz and Andrew Burnett woo that guy to want to come here? Because they got the money to pay him. They got the picks to give up in a trade. They've got the prospects. They've got a young player or two that they could include in a deal that, again, I love Tanner Mullendike, but if you can include him in a trade that gets you a big boy forward, now we got to talk. So it is not impossible, because I know a lot of you out there think that it is impossible, that if this team does not pick number one in the draft, that it is impossible for them to find that high-end player. And I'm telling you, not everybody gets that player number one. Sure, Matthews, number one. McKinnon, number one. McDavid, number one. But not every one of those guys is number one. And this is why they pay Barry Trotz the money they pay him, to find the big boy forward. If it was easy, everybody would do it. It's not. But it's not impossible. 615-737-1025. Let's get to some of your phones on this. 615-737-1025. A lot of you want to weigh in. And Adam Vingan sent me the emoji of the guy, like, with his tongue hanging out or whatever. Be nice to have Jack Eichel today, wouldn't it, Adam? 615-737-1025. Now there's the second part, as far as where they go from here. The goalie. Got a thought on that? We'll do that in your phone. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Jeff, for me, the question is there's some teams out there that really aren't crazy about trading for goalies at the deadline. The Devils did it. They traded for two, Kakinen and Jake Allen, and it gave them a bump for a little bit. But that was more of a Hail Mary as opposed to anything else, and a free look at those guys. If you take a look at it, I remember Ryan Miller talking about how hard it was to be traded mid-season. Dwayne Rollison was a success story. He got Edmonton to the Stanley Cup final in 2006. And if this doesn't work out, maybe someone just says, look, Saros is Saros and we'll take our chances. And I could hardly blame them for that. But I mean, this is not purely Nashville's decision. Saros is going to have a hammer being 1 year out of free agency. But like I said, in a perfect world, it's Saros Askarov starting for next year.
Not in my perfect world. That was Elliot on the 32 Thoughts. So the first thing when it comes to the Predators, they got to find a big boy forward. The second thing is it's time to move on from the goalie. UC Saros has got to go. And this has almost nothing to do with Saros, who I think is a good goalie. I think is in his prime, doesn't have an injury history, and has been a fine, upstanding citizen, and I think his teammates love him, and I think everybody that knows him loves him, and so this is not about Saros at all. This is about the realization that when it comes to contending in the NHL, goaltending in 2024 is not a premium. It is the running back position of the NHL, not the quarterback. You can win a lot of games with a good goaltender. With a Saros type, Connor Hellebuck, you can win a lot with that kind of goalie. Just like the Titans won a lot of games with Derrick Henry. But can you win a Super Bowl with Derrick Henry? Well, Derrick Henry just hit the open market and got $9 million. Chidobe Awuzie got 12. What's that tell you? The Vancouver Canucks had a replacement-level AHL goalie in net and won 2 of the 3 games he played. Why? Because, again, the Predators, with premium goaltending, just couldn't put enough pressure to get that average goalie to crack. And so what this means, in my opinion, is the decision has been made for the Predators, which is there is no reason to pay top-of-the-market money to a goaltender, which is what it would cost in order to retain UC Saros, and they already have his replacement there. They can't do it. Now, I worry that because of the reality that premium goaltending is more of a luxury than it is a necessity in the NHL, that other teams, when it comes to trading for Saros, won't be interested. How much, if we're sitting here saying, premium goaltending really doesn't matter that much anymore in the NHL, and Colorado's getting away with throwing Scarbinis back there, and they'll be okay, and Vancouver put in a third stringer, and it doesn't matter, and Edmonton's got some crap ass out there. Like, at some point, it's going to be, screw it, who cares? That Samsonov, who was in there for Toronto and almost stole that series for him, he sucks. Whatever. It doesn't matter. So why would you pay Saros? So if I don't want to pay Saros top of the market money, I wonder if there are other teams out there that are like, well, why would we give you a haul for the goaltender when the goaltender's not that important anymore? So he won't return as much as he probably should. He won't fetch on the trade market as much as he does, but that's fine. It's time to move on. And I know that, some people are going to get their warm fuzzies about this. To me, this has nothing to do with the player. This has nothing to do with his ability. This is a straight business decision, which is if I trade Saros, that's $5 million I'm saving next year. And for the next 5 years after that, it's probably 7.5 or 7.25. He's not going to get the 8 because he doesn't win enough. And because goaltending, again, the premium's going down, just like running back. But what is that $5 million and that 7.25, 7.5? What is that to you over the next 5 years? 3 skaters? 2 skaters? I mean, what is it? So for me, it's time to go. It's time to make the change. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com, 615-737-1025. CC says, an elite forward such as Nylander or Panarin would have made the difference in this series. Not saying the Predators would have won the Cup, but who would have thought the Predators would have lost 3 games to a third-string goalie at home with Quinn Hughes when he wasn't a big factor? A bounce here or there is something we will hear at the end of every postseason. Jared, do you see a Saros for Mitch Marner deal as an option and maybe a 2 or 3-way trade? So, my problem with Mitch Marner is he doesn't score enough. That's my problem. He doesn't score enough. You know, like when I talk about big boy forward, I'm talking about guys who score 50 goals. And he doesn't do that. Now, he's got big boy talent. And he will not be in Toronto. I mean, to me, that ship has sailed. And I do think that when he gets out of Toronto, he will play better. Because I think that there is some real toxicity between him, that team, and that city. And so I am a Marner-ish fan. Now, Robbie Stanley's blowing up my phone right now saying, do not trade for Mitch Marner. And I'm not a Marner guy. But I could be talked into it, but it'd be tough. You know, I need you to score. Like, I need a big boy that can score. We don't love McDavid because he gets a bunch of assists. Okay? We love McDavid because he scores. That kind of thing. That's what really matters. One texter says, Jared, you are 100% correct when it comes to the goalie, and you are correct on the series. They could have won it, but it's the same old story. The talent can't match up. Their good does not match up with the Vancouver elite. So I actually was underwhelmed by Vancouver. Quinn Hughes didn't do much for me in that series. Besser, outside of his hat trick, didn't do much for me in that series. Granted, that hat trick did win the game. That probably shifted the series. But again, I was expecting more, and I thought that Pettersson was an absolute no-show. If I was Vancouver, because we're talking about these big boy forwards, they're paying Elias Pettersson, Ian, was it 11.5 a year, 11.25, 12, something like that?
Yeah, something like that, 11.5, I think.
They're paying him 11.5 for the next 8 years. Woof! I mean, scoring the freaking playoffs. Holy crap. Like that, you talk about buyer's remorse. And that's what you got to be careful of. Now, they're going to say they don't have buyer's remorse right now. And Nashville did a good job and he's in a funk. And let's see. Because Edmonton does not play the kind of defense you play. And as I said, their goalie sucks. So let's see. But at the same time, like, I mean, you got to put that puck in that net. And so when you take a guy like Marner that's a 30-goal scorer every year and you want me to pay him $11 million, it's like, whoa now. Like, whoa now. Like, let's be careful. Let's not get too one way or another. One texter says, go get Steven Stamkos. The power play needs this guy badly when it comes to Stamkos. Let me say this. Stamkos still probably has a little juice left in the tank, but I just don't think that juice. Now, I love Stamkos now, like the old Stamkos, the 2016 Stamkos. Like, woo, God, I love him. The 2024 Stamkos, it's like telling me I need the 2024 Patrick Kane or the 2024 Vladimir Tarasenko. You'll be better with those guys on your team right now, but they're not going to transcend your team. And that's what we're talking about is the kind of guy you can get that can transcend your team. And the guy that you're going to acquire, it's not going to be a 35-year-old. It's going to be somebody my age that is either a free agent or wants out, or it's going to be, and this is where I go back to a guy like Marner, and again, I'm not the biggest Marner fan in the world, but it's going to be the kind of guy who is 25 years old. Like, that's what it's going to have to be. I mean, it's as simple as that. One texter says, big boy forwards do not want to come to a non-traditional hockey market. And Florida is a traditional hockey market where Matthew Tkachuk went. And Vegas is a traditional hockey market where Jack Eichel went. Please. The number one thing is the money. You've got it. The number two thing, in my opinion, is an ability to compete. You can argue you've got it. The third thing, I think, is the comfortability. Now some guys care about being in New York. Some guys care about being in Chicago or Boston or Toronto or something like that. But for the most part, those teams either stink or they're completely capped out, so it doesn't matter. At some point, you got to go somewhere. And Nashville's a very nice place to live. Each guy individually wants different things. Matt Duchene would have given up his right you-know-what in order to come here, and Artemi Panarin that same year would have had no interest in coming here. But I still believe at the end of the day that you've got the infrastructure in order to, if one of these big boy forwards wants out, hates his organization, thinks they suck, if that's the case, you've got the infrastructure to be able to get that guy. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. More of your phones here on Where We Go From Here with the Predators. Plus, I got to say this. There was a moment of looking in the mirror for me last night. Well, I should say after last night, which we'll get to coming up next. Stillman and Company, 615-737-1025 is our phone number if you want to weigh in. That's 615-737-1025. Join Cromwell Media, along with local athletes and musicians at Hermitage Golf Course on June 20th for the 615 Open, and make a difference while supporting Souls for Souls. Every $20 raised goes to a new pair of shoes for a local child experiencing homelessness. Sign up to play or sponsor at 615open.com.
it. Time winding down here at Dallas. Eichel with a shot. Reflects to the corner. Hurdle and Johnston. 7 seconds. Here's Hanovic. Far side shot. Puck winds up behind the net. Stone. Centering pass. Work it up. And that will do it. The Dallas Stars win Game 7 and will move on to face the Colorado Avalanche. Lead to Boer now 8-0 in Game 7.
Last night, Game 7, Dallas advances. Ian, did you watch that game last night?
A little bit, yeah.
I did not. You want to know why I didn't watch it?
Why is that?
Because I was watching the roast of Tom Brady.
Yeah, I
which
didn't watch
was
that, but
fabulous,
I heard it was funny.
Which we'll get to later on today in the program. But the NHL should know better than to put on a game. So they should have put that game on earlier in the day instead of putting it on up against the roast of Tom Brady. I had to choose, and I chose the roast of Tom Brady. That being said, as we're talking about, God, the Predators can't get out of the first round. Is it not amazing, given the talent that the Vegas Golden Knights have on their team and the amount of cheating that they did this year? Like, I know it's technically not cheating. It's a loophole in the rules, and it's like if you find a loophole in your taxes and you take advantage of it, I'm not saying you should go to jail, but come on now. You're cheating. And that's how I feel about Vegas and their long-term IR and the fact that they couldn't get out of the first round, or that Toronto with 4 big boy forwards can't get out of the first round. That is amazing to me. Now, look, those teams have way more talent than you do. But, I mean, think about the talent Vegas has on their team. Noah Hannafin, top draft pick, number 1 defenseman. Jack Eichel, top draft pick, number 1 forward. Mark Stone, number 1, big money, no movement clause, team captain. Like, goodness gracious. They can't get out of round 1. Austin Matthews, and I know he was sick, Austin Matthews scored 70 goals. Can't get out of the first round. Unbelievable, which is amazing. Now, again, I'm not saying that, everybody who got bounced is the same amount of good. You're not as good as Vegas. You're probably with Winnipeg and the Islanders and those kind of teams, but it's still amazing to me. So somebody tweeted me, actually tweeted Robbie and Joe, and said, you guys will have to call Jared Stillman out tomorrow morning. He is out of his mind talking one-man savior BS about the Predators. He might have a fever. Might have to check me, Ian, to see if I got a fever here. I'm not saying one guy's going to save the Predators. I'm saying the Predators, in my opinion, are one guy away. I mean, I think the Predators are legitimately one guy away. I think they've got a very good team, a solid team, a team that plays the game the right way, that's got a great coach, that all of these things. Though I thought Burnett could have done better in the series, like getting Tommy Novak the hell out of the lineup during the series, which he didn't do, and Tommy Novak continued to suck. But while I say all of that, I mean, this team needs a number 1 forward. Like a number 1. Not a manufactured, well, Philip Forsberg's our number 1. Not that. I mean, they need a Derby horse. You can't take somebody from the Kentucky Oaks and say, hey, I want you to ride in a Derby. You need that guy, like that. And I think if you get that guy, it makes everybody better because it moves everybody down a seat. Right? Now, let's say you get one of those high-octane, big boy forward, playmaking, first-line guys. Like, let's use Mitch Marner as the example, which I don't think Mitch Marner is this, but I do think Mitch Marner can be this. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm banking that that's what Mitch Marner would be if you trade for him, which is what I think a lot of you convince yourselves in your head, and that's how you end up with Matt Duchene. But Mitch Marner is more of a creator than he is a scorer, right? He's about a 25, 30 goal a year guy, but he's like a 50 assist guy. He's basically a 100 point a year guy. Put him on the right wing with Forsberg and O'Reilly. Now what happens with Forsberg? Put him on that power play. Now what happens with those? Like, it would make those guys better. That kind of player. And I think that, again, I think they're one of those players away. And the question is, it was the same thing that haunted David Poyle year after year after year. And I think it's going to be the challenge for Barry Trotz. I think it's going to decide whether or not Barry Trotz can do this or Barry Trotz can't. Can he find that guy? Matthew in Nashville says, is Joakim Kimmel a potential big boy forward? Because it was really irritating every time the Predators would miss a shot in the last 2 games that they never had anybody in front of the net to put in a rebound. Bingo! That was frustrating. I said to somebody last week, I said, if Patrick Hornquist was on this team, he'd have had 10 goals in that series with the rebounds that Seeloffs was giving up every single time. And the fact that there was nobody ever there. I don't know if Kimmel's a big boy forward or not. The comp on him coming out was Victor Arvidsson, which very much is not a big boy forward. But then Kimmel at 18 years old was at Milwaukee lighting it up. And I got really, really, really excited. And then I believe this year at Milwaukee, he didn't light it up as much. And then when I talk, Barry comes on the show and we ask him, he talks very highly of him, but certainly doesn't mention Kimmel as a guy that when he talks about the guys that he's going through, he's kind of listed in an order of Parsonen, Tomasino, Afanasiev, LaRue, Svechkov, and then he kind of gets to Kimmel. I think they feel like Kimmel's really young and that Kimmel needs way more time down in Milwaukee, and that's going to be something Barry Trotz does. But is he a potential big boy forward? I don't know the answer to that. Chris in Lewisburg says, I know the Preds were not supposed to compete for the Cup, but making the playoffs and losing a series they could have won and should have won gets added to the list of all major Tennessee teams not being able to win championships. I don't know. I didn't feel that heartbroken. Somebody texted me and they were like, you're way softer on the Predators than you would have been on the Titans. And I'm like, that's not true. Because in 2017, the Titans made the playoffs and they beat Kansas City in a playoff game. And then they went to New England. They lost to Brady and the Patriots 35-14 or whatever it was. And I thought that was a good season. Like, I know that we thought that was going to be a 10-11 win team, and they ended up being a 9-7 team, but they got to the divisional round of the playoffs. They lost the greatest quarterback who ever played while the team was still in a championship window. You weren't. And people were mad about it. Like, I expected them to go to New England that year and get their asses kicked. So I wasn't mad when they lost that game. And then they fired the coach. And I'm like, wait a minute. They got to the divisional round of the playoffs, and you fire the coach? That's, again, like firing the general manager. He's won the division 2 years in a row. He's headed for another one. Well, but Jared, Caleb, Farley, I know. But at the end of the day, what matters is winning. And so when it comes to this Predators team, like, to me, what did I say all year? I said I want an exciting March, a fun April, and one competitive playoff series. And I got one competitive playoff series. Now, should they have won it? Yeah. But again, like, you can watch that Dallas-Vegas game. You can watch that series. You ain't those teams. So, and you weren't going to be. Andrew says, Jared, if you trade Saros or Askarov, can you get first or second line scoring in return? And who do you want if yes? Well, I think the answer is no, as far as first line scoring. Can Saros be part of a package in order to do that? I think maybe. But again, like, it's not just going to be Saros. And any team you call is going to ask for Evangelista in return. Any team you call about they will ask for Evangelista. Not saying you have to give him up, but nobody wants to trade that guy, and that's why everybody wants to trade for that guy. 615-737-1025. We'll get back into the Predators. 615-737-1025. So Titans Twitter is abuzz today because the Titans are hosting Zay Jones, the journeyman wide receiver who was released by Jacksonville last week. The Titans are hosting Zay Jones for a visit. Add him onto the Tyler Boyd front. I have a reaction to that. But I also have another reaction, which is I really think the Titans are ignoring, you guessed it, right tackle. We'll do that. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. You heard in Ian's update, the Titans are bringing in wide receiver Zay Jones, formerly of Jacksonville, in for a visit. They brought in Tyler Boyd last week, and the Titans have come to an agreement with Marlon Davidson, a defensive lineman, a former, I believe he was a first-round pick, maybe a second-round pick, former high pick in Atlanta, who was on the team last year at the end of the year, and so practice squad, and they signed him back. Who cares? Now, a lot of people want to talk about Tyler Boyd. Now a lot of people want to talk about Zay Jones, and I think the Titans are totally missing the boat here. And I think Titan fans are totally missing the boat. Why are we worried about the third wide receiver or maybe fourth wide receiver when you don't have a right tackle? Last week I said, when I see the Titans bring in Tyler Boyd for a visit, I'm thinking to myself, what about right tackle? And I know that doesn't, it's not mutually exclusive, that bringing in Boyd, who had played for Brian Callahan in Cincinnati, is not meaning that they're not taking right tackle seriously. But it does seem like they just keep bringing in wide receivers and they're not bringing in tackles, and it's making me nervous. And then I saw an article that Paul Kaharski wrote at paulkaharski.com. What happened to Paul Kaharski, by the way? Paul Kaharski wrote an article, and the headline was, "It's too early to write off Nicholas Petit-Ferrer as the right tackle." What? What happened to the old Paul Kaharski, who yelled and screamed about how Mike Vrabel's crappy offensive line coach wasn't the problem, and is now he's writing, we should give Nicholas Petit-Ferrer the benefit of the doubt? That we shouldn't write him off? But they're going to keep bringing in the Scarbini receiver after Scarbini receiver because they've already written Treylon Burks off. Treylon Burks, and I'm not a Burks fan, but Treylon Burks has done more in the NFL than Nicholas Petit-Ferrer, a.k.a.
PT.
I mean, what are we doing? It's like, I'm mad because I know a lot of you have brainwashed yourselves into believing that PT doesn't suck. He sucks. I know a lot of you guys have convinced yourselves that it'll be okay. I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about them convincing themselves that it will be okay. Because Nicholas Petit-Ferrer, once again, a.k.a.
PT,
objectively stinks. In 2022, he graded out, according to Pro Football Focus, at 52.3. That's awful. Awful. For an entire season. He allowed a pressure on 7% of pass blocking snaps. That's bad. That's really, really bad. Okay, well, he was a rookie. Let's give him an offseason. Now he's got a year in the NFL under his belt. Let's see how he does. Last year was an unmitigated disaster for him. Instead of the 52.3 he had in 22, he had a 35.5. He gave up 11 pressures on 66 snaps. That is horrendous. That is bottom of the league. And the reason he didn't play more snaps last year is because he got hurt, because TJ Watt is so fast that as he tried to play against him in Pittsburgh, it basically ripped his arm out of its socket. At the same time, the reason why he didn't play more snaps in the beginning is because he was stupid enough to be one of 3 people that didn't know the NFL gambling rules. And I'm supposed to give this guy another chance? This is right tackle. Do I need to tell the right tackle story again? I see people on Twitter that are like, I think the Titans can win 10 or 11 games this year. I'm like, you don't have a right tackle. And PT is not a right tackle. And if you want to give him a chance, that's fine. Just like it's fine to give Treylon Burks a chance by saying Hopkins and Ridley are going to play over you, but if they end up getting hurt or you end up doing well and pushing your way up the depth chart, good. But what they're doing is they're not doing that. There's no competition for that spot. There's none. They've moved Dylan Radunz, who objectively, again, is better than PT. They've moved Dylan Radunz to guard. And the only guy out there is Jalen Duncan, and he's worse than PT. What are we doing? Why do I have to give a guy who's been in the NFL for 2 years and has been terrible for those 2 years the benefit of the doubt on year number 3. Why do I have to? Because the team and the fans don't want to be skeptical during what we call, oh, it'll be fine season, which is where we are right now. Yeah, I mean, I know Trevondre Sweat played at 380 pounds last year, but he's promised he'll skip the buffet at Shoney's. Well, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. And not only that, we did that last year. Last year we said it'll be fine. Andre Dillard couldn't get off the bench in Philadelphia, but he's got real left tackle potential, and if he makes it, that'll be a steal at $11 million. It'll be fine. Yeah. Aaron Brewer is too small to play left guard, but he'll be a better fit at 270 pounds at center. I knew at the third day of practice that this offensive line was a complete and total mess. The third day. I walked out. They hadn't even worn pads. It was a Saturday. I walked out of practice. I got in my car. I called my dad, and I said, I'm a Titan fan. And I said, Dad, our offensive line sucks. Like, I'm just telling you right now. It's been 3 practices, and they haven't put the pads on. And Vrabel's, it takes longer for the offensive line to get a reg to going in practice. And, they hadn't worn the pads yet. And, it'll be okay. Right. We're doing that again. If you put Nicholas Petit-Frere out there, you are doing the same things that you have done the last 2 years that have gotten everybody fired. You're doing it again. So why am I supposed to? And why are you putting your hopes and expectations in the same crap bums from before? I mean, I think it's bad enough that me personally, I am giving Peter Skoronski the benefit of the doubt because of where he was drafted and what everybody said about him and the fact that the center sucked and the left tackle sucked last year and the coach sucked. I'm willing to do that for Skoronski. To say, okay, last year was a mulligan. Also, the amount of you guys that sit there and talk about that appendectomy, like he wasn't supposed to recover from an appendectomy it was week 2. Oh, Jared, he had an appendectomy and it zapped him of all of his strength in November. It was week 2. So we've made every excuse for Skoronski, and I'm willing to accept it this offseason and hope and expect for him to play better next year. I'll give you Peter, but not PT. PT does not get a pass. Nobody thinks that it's too soon to write off Treylon Burks. They're bringing in Treylon Burks' replacement every day. Nobody thinks it's too soon to write off Malik Willis. We saw him for 2 years. He sucks. So why is it too soon to write off PT? I mean, in all seriousness, and I know Bill Callahan's the guru, but in all seriousness, Radens at the end of last year, and I am not a Radens fan, but Radens at the end of last year played better than Nicholas Petit-Frere has ever played in the NFL. And I'm just supposed to believe that they're going to coach up this guy who was the number 1 recruit in the country, went to Ohio State, played left tackle, and was so soft that he went in the 3rd round? I'm supposed to believe that guy, after 2 years of stinking or of missing, is going to all of a sudden in year 3 turn into Jack Conklin? Give me a break. I mean, it's crazy talk. And it's one thing for fans out there that want to believe that Nicholas Petit-Frere doesn't stink. It's fine for fans to believe that. Because, again, fans want to be optimistic about the season. Fans want to hope that their team can be good. Fans want all those things. And I want my team to be good too. But Paul should know better. Like the fact that Paul is sitting there saying, oh, no, it's too early to write off PT. It's like, oh, good God. How can you possibly believe this? And again, it's the same thing that happened last year. Oh, no, Andre Dillard is good. He just couldn't play in Philly because Jordan Mailata beat him out. Yes, that's what teams like. Undrafted guys or 7th-round guys or whatever it was that Mailata was, rugby players, to come in here and beat out our first-round picks, and that doesn't say something about our first-round pick. Or, oh, yeah, the 270-pound center who couldn't cut it at left guard the year before, he'll be good. Let's double or triple or quadruple his salary, and let's stick him out there. And they did. And you guys didn't care about it on May 6th of 2023. But you cared about it on October 6th. And if you put Nicholas Petit-Frere out there, I don't give a rat's ass if this is Brian Callahan's first year. You put PT out there, it's on you. Because we've seen him for 2 years. He's not good. It is objective that he's not good. There's nothing about him that would say that he's going to be a good player. So when it comes to guys like that, I take the approach of, let's see. Let's put him on the roster. Let's replace, let's put a starter ahead of him. And if somebody gets hurt or he beats them out, good. But what I am not okay with is PT and Duncan at right tackle. And that's what it looks like. And that is terrible. And stop forgetting about what happened in the past, because the easiest way to figure out what is going, future production is what these guys have done, or in the case of these two guys, what they have not done in the past. They're not good. Stop talking yourself into it. And I think the Titans are doing the exact same thing. 615-737-1025. Jared, they couldn't fill every hole in one off season. Boy, that's a convenient narrative. But coming up next, there's a difference between filling every single hole on the team with Pro Bowl players and what the Titans are doing. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company here on the program. Let's talk Tennessee Men's Clinic. 615-737-1025, by the way, is the phone number. Fellas, you've put this off for way too long, and it's time to get it done and move forward with your sex life, and the Tennessee Men's Clinic is the leader in bedroom confidence. The reality is pills often quit working, and guys start making excuses for why they're not coming to bed. And did you know that studies show that men will be more irritable and argumentative before bed just to avoid failing at intimacy? And yes, I know. Guys hate going to the doctor. But the Tennessee Men's Clinic was created in 2014 to take care of guys just like you. For a decade, the urologists and providers at the Tennessee Men's Clinic have helped guys with ED and weight loss, and they now even offer aesthetic enhancements and cosmetic procedures. Their ED and weight loss treatments truly change lives, and with no surgery, they are seeing success rates as high as 90%. They specialize in seeing guys who think they're out of luck regain hope that they can be successful in the bedroom and beyond. They even offer same or next day appointments. Guys, it's time to feel amazing and hit your goals this year, so stop thinking about it and get in there. Call 615-208-9090, 615-208-9090, or go to TennesseeMen'sClinic.com to book an appointment today. That's TennesseeMen'sClinic.com.
I do not think that Coach Callahan actually believes that Jalen Duncan can play right tackle in this league. I also think that he probably is a little worried about Nicholas Petit-Frere, although I do believe that he could be coached into a position where he can be an adequate right tackle. That's Petit-Frere. But Jalen Duncan at right tackle, imagine a big bull mastiff or say a pit bull in a junkyard, grabbing a small dog by the back of the neck and thrashing it all over the place. That would be Jalen Duncan at right tackle, because that was Jalen Duncan at left tackle last year. And at right tackle, you tend to play bigger, stronger defenders.
That was Trevor saying, look, man, Jalen Duncan ain't starting, and PT, we'll see. Let me just say this. I know a lot of you, I haven't looked at the text line. I'll get to it in a second. I know a lot of you are going to say, Jared, they couldn't fill every hole in one off season, because a lot of you have said that. And I think that's a very convenient narrative. Just like the same narrative the text line was pushing when the Titans told people they weren't going to spend money in free agency. And then the text line said, well, they don't need to spend money, Jared, because they don't know what they have in Levis. And then they did, and then everybody seemed to be happy about that. But again, the narrative, let's feel good about ourselves. Let's not worry about whether or not we're going to be good. Let's just feel good. So let's go back to they couldn't fill every hole in one offseason. First of all, you absolutely could fill every hole in one offseason. Look at the Texans. You could do it if you wanted to, but you didn't. You already had a running back, and then you gave another running back $8 million. Take away the $8 million you gave the second running back, give that to the Raiders right tackle who signed for $7 million with the Giants, and boom, now you got a right tackle. And second, even if you can't fill every hole, there are some positions you can fudge it at. There are others that you can't. You can fudge it at guard, which is why you don't take a guard with the 11th overall pick. You can fudge it at running back, which is why you can take a guy as an undrafted free agent and turn around and hand him the ball and be okay. You can, in the middle of the season, go get Deontay Foreman, and Dontrell Hilliard and be okay. You can fudge it at safety. You can't fudge it at quarterback. I mean, right now, either the Titans are fudging it at inside linebacker, right guard, and tight end. And to an extent, I'm okay with that. I mean, I'd like to have a better tight end. I'd like to have a better right guard. I'd like to have a better inside backer. But I can live with it. If they put Molden at safety, they're fudging it there too. And I can live with that. But not right tackle. You cannot fudge it with a pass rusher. You can't just say, oh, we'll just take this guy and rush the passer. I saw them try to fudge it. That was called 2020. They had Jack Crawford out there rushing the passer. You cannot fudge it at pass rusher. You cannot fudge it at corner. You cannot fudge it at right tackle. And don't make me tell the story, but it was this time 9 years ago, that horrendous 3-13 Ken Wisenhunt season ahead, up in front of us. And I was like, yeah, Titans going to be any good this year. And I was optimistic about that team too. I thought that team was going to be good. And I was told, we don't have a right tackle. And here we are 9 years later with no right tackle. 615-737-1025. Your phone's driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com. One texter says, the dude they picked up from the Browns will start at right tackle. Leroy Watson.
Leroy
Watson has played in 7 career NFL games and has 0 starts. Ian, I'll ask you the same question. I'll put you on the spot. Again, with something that I traditionally don't like to do, but I feel confident enough in this. Would Floyd Reese take a guy who's played in 7 games and 0 career starts and start him at right tackle?
Probably not.
Come on now. Like, again, this is what we say. This is talking yourself into it. Talking yourself into it season. Woo. Kyle is up next here on our program. Thank you for waiting. Go ahead, Kyle.
Hey, guys. I'm with you. I want a receiver, but offensive line, I'm a Will Levis fan. I want his butt protected, so that's all I really care about until it's secure. Andrus Peat is out there. I know he's a left guard, 3-time Pro Bowl left guard, played tackle last year. Who can we get at right tackle to help us out?
It's a good thing you bring that up, and I appreciate your call, Kyle. I mean, at this point, you really are back at the same spot you were last year when you brought in Chris Hubbard. It's going to be that kind of player who is a backup. Hubbard's a backup. You signed him, and he had to start, and he wasn't terrible. And, that's probably best case scenario now. But Andrus Peat is a left side of the line player, and if you think J.C. Latham is going to play left tackle, then other than insurance as a backup, or in case Latham stinks and has to move to right tackle, which is going to be a horrendous proposition for Brian Callahan and for Rand Carthon if that's what happens, then there isn't necessarily the same level of need as there is for a starting right tackle. One texter says, stop taking one text and classifying it as the entire fan base. Run a poll if you want to know what the majority of people think. I saw on Buck's Twitter today, it was like, what position is the most important position for the Titans to fill? And every single person was like, safety. There were like 6 people. Safety, 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 safety. I'm like, guys, safety is a fudgeable position. That's why there are safeties that are out there that nobody's paying. That's why safeties hit free agency and guys that should make $10 million, $11 million end up making $6 million. Right tackle. That's the position you need. You don't have a right tackle. And again, I'm not bitching about right guard. I'm not bitching about tight end. I'm not complaining about inside backer. I'm not complaining about any of those. A right tackle is a different position. Chris, before I dump this theory, Chris texted in. Jared, you know there was no way the Titans could possibly fill all the holes in one offseason. Having said that, on paper, I think they've done a good job. They don't have a right tackle. For everybody out there that wants to give Rand Carthon the Executive of the Year award, which I know, I bet you there are people in this town, there are people that are Titan fans on Twitter that I think have called the trophy shop and have already made a plaque that says Rand Carthon 2024 Executive of the Year. You are ready to give that to him. Again, you don't have a right tackle. But congratulations. Congratulations on signing a second running back. Whee! That's why I see the Zay Jones thing. I'm like, woo, Zay Jones, whee! Because you know what? That's what your team's, every team sitting there said, God, if we just had a Zay Jones. If we just had a Zay Jones, Jared, think about what we could do. I mean, it's unbelievable. One texter says, Jared, it's going to be PT, and that's it. Let's see how it plays out. You are not a guru. Jeez, says the texter. I know sucks when I see it. And what often happens, and you guys know this, what often happens is I tell you somebody stinks. Everybody gets mad. Everybody yells at me. Everybody says it's my fault. Everybody says, oh, Jared Stillman. And then you realize, oh, wow, Aaron Brewer does suck. You realize over time, like, man, Jared was right. Guy kind of does stink. Aaron Brewer does kind of stink. I mean, I'm watching this Tampa Bay game last year. I'm like, Skoronski's awful. Now, watching the game with my eyes, I'm like, he ain't blocking anybody. Put it out on Twitter, and all the boo-hoos on there are like, oh, he doesn't know what he's talking about. He didn't watch the games. He doesn't know football. He doesn't. And then week after week after week after week, Skoronski plays worse and worse and worse and worse. And then finally, Fox, they're playing the Seahawks, and they're like, man, that was terrible by Skoronski right there, showing a replay of a sack. And again, I'm giving Skoronski the benefit of the doubt and saying he'll be better this year. I ain't giving PT the benefit of the doubt. He's terrible. Unbelievable. LD from McMinnville says, calm down with the hyperbole. According to Paul Kaharski, we shouldn't count PT out at right tackle. I know. I saw the article and I said, what's gotten into Paul? Paul's gone soft. That article, 99% of the time, when somebody writes something, or especially when somebody reports something, Jeremy Fowler reports, and then somebody's like, what does Jeremy Fowler know? And I'm always like, okay, get mad at the messenger because you don't like what you hear. This is the 1% where I'm like, Paul, you know better than this. You know PT stinks. Every objective number out there says that the guy sucks. Every single one of them. And you guys telling me to calm down about it. I mean, again, let's just say I'm wrong. Let's say I'm wrong about Nicholas Petit-Frere, and he's actually good, which I don't think he is, but you're right, I'm wrong here. Would it hurt you to go get somebody else? And if he's not, and then you get to training camp and you realize that he does stink, you can stick that replacement level backup-ish David Quessenberry kind of player there? Or do you want to do what you did last year at left tackle, which is get to training camp, realize the guy sucks, and now you're swapping him in and out with Jalen Duncan? And what happens is, this is what Vrabel did last year. He played Andre Dillard until he couldn't take it anymore, and then he put Duncan in. And Duncan was just as bad that he played Duncan for as long as he could until he couldn't take it anymore, and then he had to put Dillard back in. Are you ready to do that? Because that's what's going to happen. Unless PT is actually good. And there's no evidence that says that he is good. And even if there's evidence that says that he could be good, evidence that says somebody could be good is not the definitive he is good. And that's the problem. 615-737-1025. A lot of you guys want to get back in on the phones at 615-737-1025, so we will continue with that. Stillman and Company, 1025-1063 The Game.
I mean, Traylon's having a really good offseason. His attitude and his approach, to the offseason has been excellent. He's been here every day. He's, working extremely hard, especially with our new strength and conditioning staff, led by Zach Woodfin, and now, him getting with Coach Tobert. The arrow's pointing up on Traylon. Like I said, he's having a really good offseason. And, the big thing for Traylon is staying healthy. Staying healthy, staying out there, and giving him more opportunities to get the ball. But I like where Traylon is right now.
It was Rand Carthon last week. Brian Callahan said similar things, and Titan fans ate it up. Oh, Traylon, he's working hard. He's going to fit in. He's going to this, he's going to that. And then the Titans brought in Tyler Boyd for a visit. And now the Titans are bringing in Zay Jones for a visit. And I mean, come on now. Like you can say whatever you want. Again, I always say, don't listen to what these teams say. That's why I was so shocked by Harbaugh. Don't listen to what these teams say. Look at what they do. What they're saying is, hey, we're excited for Burks. We think he's got a lot of upside. You know, he's working real hard, and he's a big part of this team. And what they're showing us is, yeah, we don't give a rat's ass about him. Can anybody play receiver? Let's bring him in. By the way, let me say this for the record. When we talk about fudging it, like how the Titans are trying to fudge it at right tackle, you can fudge this third receiver spot. I don't like it. But let's say Burks gets hurt again or is too fat or doesn't have the dog, whatever it may be. You can put NWI out there and you'll survive. You got to a number 1 seed 1 year with NWI playing a significant amount of offensive snaps. Hell, I mean, some of Will Levis's biggest throws last year were to NWI. I don't like it, but you can live with it. What you can't live with is no right tackle. But man, do the Titans. I mean, if they keep bringing every receiver, they're telling you what you think right there. Not interested in Burks at all. One texter says, Jared, you are wrong again. The Titans have a right tackle, and they took him with the 7th overall pick. Well, that's great. But if they took their right tackle with the 7th overall pick, Ian, what problem does that lead to the Titans having?
Well, they don't have a left tackle.
Then you don't have a left tackle. So, I mean, right now I'm giving you left tackle because you took J.C. Latham. You say he's going to play left tackle. The guru says he can do it, even though I think his body is more built for right tackle than it is for left tackle. The guru says he can do it. The guru would know better than me. I'll give you that one. I'll give you him. I'll give you Skoronski. And I like Cushenberry, and he's got a proven track record in the NFL, so I'm not worried about him. I'll let you get away with the, Brunskill-Radens combination at right guard because it's right guard and you can figure it out and guard doesn't matter that much. I am not giving you right tackle. PT and Duncan. Come on now. Unbelievable. One texter into the text line says, Jared, historically, the Titans have carried the fewest receivers in the NFL. The Bengals carried the most, and it is a good move to have depth. See, here's the problem, though. The problem when it comes to we need depth at receiver. That's great. But we're talking about number 3 wide receiver, number 4 wide receiver, number 5 wide receiver. And we're just ignoring number 1 right tackle. Texter continues, I know it's what you do being dramatic, but you are being too dramatic again. We have a right tackle. The texter says, we just don't have a good right tackle. I mean, you had Andre Dillard at left tackle last year. Does that count as not having a left tackle, or does that count as not having a good left tackle? Somebody help me out here. I mean, somebody's going to play right tackle this year. The question is, can the guy actually do it? Last year, the answer was no. My opinion of Nicholas Petit-Frere, a.k.a.
PT.
My opinion of PT is that he can't do it. He can't do it. 11 pressures on 66 snaps. Well, Jared, it's not his fault that he got hurt. No, it's not. But the number 1 ability is availability, and the reason he got hurt is because T.J. Watt was too fast. Well, guess what? If he goes to right tackle this year, he's going to be playing against T.J. Watt again. Well, Jared, it's not his fault he got that gambling suspension. Yes, it is. It is his fault, and it is a bad thing. It's not good. Texter says, the year the GM said that to you about the right tackle, we literally did not have a right tackle at all, not even a bad one. This is different. I agree that we do not have a good right tackle or a good right guard yet. That team had Byron Bell, and I would argue that Byron Bell was the same level of player that the Scarbini crew is. I mean, I think Byron Bell, because he was a veteran with experience, I think Byron Bell was probably a better player absolutely better than Jalen Duncan. and probably a better player than Petit Frere. Probably didn't have Petit Frere's talent, but Petit Frere's been getting by talent his entire career. He was the number one recruit in the country. I mean, I think Gentry Estes told me that it was like, for him, he was like Alabama, Georgia, Notre Dame, and Ohio State. But then when he got going against good competition in college, he could never match it because he wasn't very good, and that's why he falls to the third round. I mean, it's just, again, you guys are wanting to believe this. Like, and that's what I worry about. One texter said into the text line, didn't Trevor say that PT could be serviceable at right tackle? Trevor said he could be serviceable at right tackle. There is a far gap between could be and is. And when you start to imagine that could be equals is, now you're in trouble. Remember, again, this takes me back to Dillard. Andre Dillard had first-round talent. In fact, the Texans drafted Titus Howard, one pick behind Dillard, because Philadelphia knew Houston was going to take Dillard, and they jumped him because they wanted Dillard so bad. The two players Philadelphia reportedly went into that night of the 2019 draft, earmarked of we got to have him, were Jeffrey Simmons, if he fell, and Dillard. And so they jumped ahead of Houston, and they took Dillard because of the talent. And Howie Roseman over there in Philly, he's no schmo. He knows what he's doing. And he drafted Dillard. And then they realized Dillard sucked. And Jordan Mailata beat him out because he stunk. But what we did last year, and I say we because I was part of this, what we did was we sat back and we said, oh, well, he's got first-round talent, and it just was a numbers thing. You know, Mailata was really good, and so he was the backup because Mailata's good, and so that's why, and Dillard's, Dillard could be good. I mean, last year, after that horrendous Cleveland game, when Mike Vrabel and Tim Kelly thought it was a good idea to let Myles Garrett go one-on-one against Andre Dillard. And I believe, I asked Tim Kelly the question, or I asked Vrabel the question the next week about, can he stop Trey Hendrickson one-on-one? And Vrabel, oh, well, he's going to have to do it. And Tim Kelly was like, he's got the talent. There are some plays that we see on the film, and we're like, man, you can do this. But again, the difference between you can do it or it could happen and it's going to be what happens or it is happening are two totally different things. And a lot of times, because people want to, because it's convenient, because it's comfortable, a lot of people do that. They take what something could be and assume that that's what it is. And I'm not willing to do that with PT. And I do not care who's coaching him. I don't care if it's Bill Callahan, Mike Munchak, Vince Lombardi, Attila the Hun. I do not care who's coaching. Do not care. Larry texts in and says, why in the hell are we yelling and screaming on May 6th? Ian, why are we yelling and screaming on May 6th?
Because you don't have a right tackle.
Because you can do something about it. You can do something about it. Now, you can't do what you could do about it on March 6th, but you can do something about it on May 6th. You can't do anything about it on September 6th. You can't do anything about it on October 6th. And you know how I know you can't do anything about it on October 6th? Because for the last 2 years, on October 6th, you've had Dennis Daly and Andre Dillard. And that's what it's been. Swap and spit. One texter said, come on, Jared. We traded a 7th rounder for that practice squad guy. Amazing. And people are like, well, didn't they add a right tackle? He played tackle. Practice. He's got 7 career games. He's never started. My guess is, and I don't know this for a fact, my guess is he went in there on the field goal team. Robert in Spring Hill says, Jared, there's a lot of us out here who hear what you're saying, and we agree with you. The problem is, if you remember before the draft, after the season, it ended, this team had so many positions to fill, it was going to be impossible to fill them, and we don't know if they went after some tackles and just didn't get them. But at the end of the day, they made a lot of progress, and I think there's still work to do, and you're not going to sign everybody, unfortunately. Here's the problem. It's right tackle. If you were worried that, we're going to be competing for one of these tackles, Even though these tackles aren't great, they at least can start. Jermaine Illuminor, Jonah Williams, Morgan Moses, who was a trade, who, again, you could have traded for, swapped. The Jets swapped spots in the 4th in order to get Morgan Moses, a right tackle from Baltimore who plays every game and is solid. The problem is that if you didn't prioritize those guys at all. Because if you did, you wouldn't have given $8 million to a running back on the first day of free agency when you drafted a running back in the 3rd round last year. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. The roast of Tom Brady. I mean, I'm sure there are a lot of you that say, I don't care about Tom Brady. If you missed that roast, you missed something special last night. White Bison. I love White Bison. White Bison's your local coffee shop with specialty coffee and so much more. Explore their selection of premium coffee blends, refreshing drinks, and, of course, food, featuring fresh-made premium breakfast, lunch, and snack options. Download their app and join the White Bison Rewards program where you can place orders on the go anytime and get rewarded and earn free coffee. Stop by White Bison and brighten your day with a sweet cinnamon beehive latte or an iced honey nut macchiato or the vanilla rooibos tea latte. Man, I tell you, White Bison, they crush it. Find your perfect cup at White Bison, where it's finely crafted for you every single day. That's White Bison and twice daily, fresh all day.
You and Bill are so far apart from each other. I just feel like, why do y'all take a shot together, man? Yeah, Robert wants to do it. Bill, let's make the uncomfortable uncomfortable, right? Pour Bill a shot. Robert's here. Wait, Bill, don't move. Bill, this is a big moment, Bill. Stay right here. Stay right here. Cheers.
I wanted to say
This is the greatest coach in the history of the game that did what no one else has done. And having Tom Brady and him was the greatest honor the good Lord gave me. So, cheers. Let's go. Drink it. A black man made that happen.
That was Kevin Hart last night of the roast of Tom Brady, which was an all-timer. And I'm sure you all know the roast of Tom Brady exists. Maybe some of you knew it was happening ahead of time, but there's no way after the roast that you haven't heard somebody talk about the roast last night, 7 o'clock on Netflix. And I was looking forward to the roast. They made a big deal last week when it was announced that Bill Belichick would be one of the roasters. I think for the most part that those roasts on TV kind of stink because most of the time they're roasting people I don't care about. Now, I remember years and years and years ago, they had a roast of Flava Flav that I thought was amazing. I want to say it was Comedy Central did those, but it was good, whatever. So last night, Game 7's on between Dallas and Vegas. And I'm like, okay, do I watch Game 7 or do I watch the roast of Tom Brady? Now, Ian, you know me probably as well as anybody. If you had to pick for me which one is more up my alley, Game
definitely
7,
the roast.
So I picked the roast. And I'm like, I'm sorry, it is what it is. And I knew right away that we were in for something. Like, Kevin Hart starts the show off. And I'm trying not to give away the jokes because, I want you guys to watch it because it was so good. But, I mean, he was going at the jugular. They said at the start of this, nothing's off the table. They said nothing is off the table with Brady. And I was like, okay, we hear that kind of talk all the time. It's like every radio host said, we're going to tell the truth. And then they get up there and they start carrying water for the local team. It's, same old, same old. And when they get the jokes they were making about Aaron Hernandez, Giselle, they're like, I immediately knew, this is going to be something. And then when Drew Bledsoe was the first player roaster, and when he starts making jokes about Randy Moss being black, I was like, okay, this is going to the end zone here. This is not, here's some former players. They'll get up there and tell, a couple little quick hitters here and there. Like, I was like, no. This is a made for mature audiences only type of comedy show. And it was fabulous. Netflix went all out. The guest list was incredible with Bledsoe, Edelman, Randy Moss. Randy wasn't that great, but, Randy Moss, he was okay. Belichick was awesome. They brought out Peyton. He was great. And then the Netflix comedians that they had on the show. I mean, I didn't even know some of these people. It was great marketing by Netflix, right? You're going to pay all this money to get Brady and Belichick and Manning and Kevin Hart. You might as well feature your Netflix comedians. Like this Sam J. Ian, have you ever heard of Sam J before?
I have not, nope.
This woman, Sam J., she brought the house down last night. I mean, it was the kind of thing where I'm like, whenever Sam J's special comes out, it's probably already out. It's probably on Netflix. Whenever Sam J's special comes out, I got to watch it because she was so funny. I mean, it was incredible. And the jokes, and here's where I think Netflix really got this right. It's obvious to me that they got Drew Bledsoe, Bill Belichick, Rob Gronkowski, Julian Edelman, Randy Moss, all those celebrity roasters, they got them with their joke writers. Because there's no way Belichick and Bledsoe and Edelman, boy, he was freaking on fire last night. There's no way that those guys came up with their own jokes. No way. Those jokes were too good. And I'm telling you, man, it was awesome. And I think it's the kind of thing where if you hate Tom, I called my dad about 20 minutes into it last night. I was like, Dad, you have got to tune into the roast of Tom Brady. And my dad was like, yeah, I heard they were doing that, but I'm not a Brady guy, so I'm not interested. I'm like, okay. If you're somebody who hates Tom Brady, which I am not, I love Tom Brady, but if you hate Tom Brady, you will love the roast of Tom Brady. And if you love Tom Brady, you will love the roast of Tom Brady. And I thought the best part of the night, well, Brady's jokes were pretty good too, but I thought one of the best parts of the night was there were two separate occasions. Now, I always talk on Fireball Hot Take Friday about, getting together and celebrating the good times and Fireball whiskey and whatnot. There was the cut we played coming back from break where Kevin Hart, got Bill and Kraft up there together on the stage, and they poured out a shot glass. And it was like, okay, Bill and Kraft, and they cheers, and Kraft got up there and said that Belichick and Brady were the best ever, and they took the shot. And with all the drama and all the stories and it felt like a real bygones being bygones moment. And then Gronk was up there at one point, and he got Bill and Brady to toast a shot together. And it was like that. They could not have done that any better. If I was the Netflix CEO, because something like this, the amount of money they spend on it, the amount of, everything else, this is one of those, everybody in the company is paying attention to this kind of thing. The Netflix CEO should have gone down to the truck with the producers and everybody else after it was over and just clapped and said bravo, because it was so well done. So well done. I mean, it was fabulous. Fabulous. One texter says, nothing is off the table except the massage sexual joke about the billionaire. Now, Brady got mad at that. Oh, my God. Woo! So, Jeff Ross, I didn't even know who this guy is. Is this different than the wrestling guy?
Jeff Ross, he is the roast master. He is the original roast master. He ends every roast.
So, he came out in a jersey that said Roast J. Simpson.
Oh, he's hilarious.
I mean,
he is next level.
So he made the joke about the massage parlor, and Brady got up there and said, don't do that again. And like me and my friends that were watching the roast, we were texting like, I think that's real. I think Brady's mad about that. Like, I mean, Brady was, like, unbelievable. It was awesome. If you have not seen it, again, I don't want to give away a lot of the jokes, even though I've given away some of the moments here. I don't want to give away a lot of it because I think it was 3 hours long, and it was truly worth the 3 hours. Like, it was really worth the 3 hours. My only regret about the roast of Tom Brady is that I did not take one of those legal in Tennessee Delta 8 gummies before watching the roast of Tom Brady, because it was that incredible. And again, people are texting about how Nikki Glazer was really good, and then the Kill Tony guy was really good, and then the other guy, I mean, I don't even remember all their names, that he was really good. I think everybody had their favorite Netflix comedian of the night last night. Mine was Sam J. I thought Sam J was on freaking fire last night. It was wonderful. Now, I have a second thought to this. We need a second roast, but not of Tom Brady. We need a roast of Michael Jordan. Like, I don't know how much money you have to pay Jordan to do it. But could you imagine, just like last night, where it was Bill and Kraft and Brady and Gronk and Edelman and Randy and Bledsoe, and could you imagine Michael Jordan being roasted, Charles Barkley, Phil Jackson, Scottie Pippen, Roy Williams, Doug Collins, Ahmad Rashad, Jerry Reinsdorf, all those guys, B.J. Armstrong. Could you imagine? Dennis Rodman. Could you imagine, especially after The Last Dance, what the roast of Michael Jordan would look like? But Michael might fight somebody if they did that. But that's the next step, is to do something similar with Michael Jordan. But, my goodness. 615-737-1025 is our phone number if you want to weigh in. 615-737-1025. Another day and another report of somebody doubting Tavondre Sweat. We'll get to that next. Someone in Company, 1025, 1063 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. So ESPN, I think everybody's decided they like getting into this business, and I can't lie. I click on this stuff. ESPN did the Coaching Confidential. Adam Rittenberg, an ESPN college football writer, and a good one at that, talked to college football coaches about draft picks, saying, hey, what do you think about this? And talk to an SEC coach about that, and an ACC coordinator about this, and a Pac-12 guy. And so just kind of like saying, hey, we talked to the coaches around the leagues. Here's what they say about the players that were drafted. And it's another day in which another report comes out about Tavondre Sweat. Or another opinion comes out about Tavondre Sweat. Now, I know. See, I clicked the article today because when I pulled up ESPN.com and I'm logged in and my favorite teams are the Titans and the Braves and the Predators and the Vols so that news comes up to the front for me. When I opened it up, it was, see what college coaches have to say about J.C. Latham. And there wasn't really much there on Latham, which we'll get to in a second. It was just kind of like, yeah, one SEC coach figured he went a little bit higher than he was going to go. But there was a whole section on Tavondre Sweat. And I know by now there have been so many reports about why Tavondre Sweat won't work out that have nothing to do with the ability of the football player that I think at this point Titan fans just want to put their hands over their ears and go, la, 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 I don't hear any of this. So if you're one of those fans, you don't want to hear this Adam Rittenberg report. But Adam Rittenberg talked to a pair of Big 12 coaches, one of whom was a coordinator, and they said pretty much what everybody else is saying, which is Sweat's a baller, but he's fat and he's dumb. And what is the old saying? Fat guys stay fat, dumb guys stay dumb, injured guys stay injured. Rittenberg writes, quote, Texas lineman Tavondre Sweat was one of the more intriguing defensive prospects entering draft weekend. He won the Outland Trophy as the nation's top interior lineman in 2023, as well as Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year. But he was also arrested in Austin weeks before the draft on a driving while intoxicated charge. We all know that. Rittenberg continues. At 366 pounds, Sweat also isn't a fit for every defensive scheme. He was taken in the second round by the Titans. Quote, T. Sweat, if he can ever get in shape, he'll be good, a Big 12 defensive assistant said. Added a Big 12 coordinator, quote, there are some big question marks on him. Not athletically, he's huge, but just doing dumb. Four-letter word starts with S. The same dumb stuff Vrabel said hurts the team. Translation? He's good, but he's fat. And he's good, but he does dumb stuff. And so I think instead of complaining about what people are saying, because why would a Big 12 defensive coordinator have any reason to lie about that? Instead of saying, hey, these guys don't know, and Tavondre Sweat, he'll show you, and he was working out, and instead of that, what I really want to know is, what is the Titans' plan for Tavondre Sweat? I mean, I know they flew down to meet him, and they met mom and grandma and everybody else, and I know they, quote-unquote, believe in the person, because they told us that when they drafted him. But surely they have to have a plan of how does Tavondre Sweat not get to 400 pounds? Surely they have to have a plan for how Tavondre Sweat doesn't get in trouble and end up off the field. I've worked with people before that were insanely talented at what they did. And the hardest part was getting them to the church on time. Oh boy, could they give you a sermon. But you had to get them to church on time. And you could not count on them doing it themselves. So surely the Titans have a plan, right? And it's got to be a better plan than, oh, well, Jeff Simmons will keep him in line because that's not Jeff Simmons' job. Jeff Simmons' job is to hit the quarterback, to affect the quarterback to make bad passes, and to tackle ball carriers. That's his job. Now, leadership's a part of it, but again, we don't look at, the stats at the end of the day and say, well, he got 9 sacks and he had 14 tackle for losses and he kept Tavondre Sweat at 368 pounds. That's not his job. They have coaches. They have advisors and therapists and everything else on the staff. So what is the plan here? And here's where my opinion of the Titans might differ from yours. When you say, Jared, you hate the Titans, you couldn't be more wrong. I love the Titans. You guys hear me on draft night when I go crazy over these picks. Do you think I could go that crazy over these picks in live time and have the reaction that I have if I didn't care? You know the answer to that. So when you say, Jared, you hate the Titans, that couldn't be further from the truth. I love the Titans. I want the Titans to win a Super Bowl more than you guys know. But this is where Jared doesn't trust the Titans, which is 99% of the time, I would expect an organization to have a bona fide plan. You report to this guy, you meet with that guy, you do this, you live here, you eat this, you go there. But I don't know if I trust the Titans to do that. I don't know if I trust the Titans to truly figure out the right way to babysit Tavondre Sweat, which is what he needs. Or if they're just going to say, like Brian Callahan, well, if he gains too much weight, we'll fine him. Okay. I mean, the guy got a DUI or DWI weeks before the draft. I mean, you can't, when he is making the decision to hit the drive-thru at Taco Bell, he's not thinking about those fines the same way that he probably wasn't thinking when he got in a car about, hey, if I get caught having a little too much sauce tonight, this could tank my draft stock. He probably didn't think about that. So, I mean, I'm sorry, but I just want to know what the plan is. And I brought up the idea last week of, hey, bring in a guy like Chris Sanders to mentor him, a guy who I know has experience with young people and guiding them, with somebody who's got, skins on the wall as a former NFL player and a supportive, disposition and personality. But I don't know what they're going to do. I just don't know what they're going to do. And to me, this all comes back to whether or not the Titans actually have a plan, or if it's like Rand said the night of the draft, well, yeah, we've got to work with all these young guys about making sure that they adjust to the league like J.C. Latham. I don't have the same concerns about J.C. Latham that I do Tavondre Sweat. So I want to know the Titans' plan. And I want to know that it's a real plan and not just if he weighs 380 pounds, we'll fine him. Okay, we'll see. Maybe that works. I don't know. But to me, I need more of a plan. I need more of when we went down to Texas, we told Tavondre, if we draft you, you got to do this, 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 and this. And if you don't do this, we're going to have problems. But again, I don't trust the Titans' decision-making, so why would I trust them to have done the right thing here? 615-737-1025. A lot of you want to weigh in on this, so we'll get to your phones on it. Also, speaking of Sweat, there is a narrative that was perpetuated when the Titans did not trade out of the pick, moving down the board to be able to take Sweat, gaining assets for the future, about the run on defensive tackles. Well, there was a report in The Athletic, an insanely detailed piece that had nothing to do with the Titans. But it does prove that there's at least one GM that the Titans didn't take their guy which makes it, again, probably more likely they could have traded down for Sweat. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 615-737-1025, and your phones, 615-737-1025. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. I love Hiller. They are the best. They take great care of my home, and they can do the same for you. Have you ever had a contractor coming to your home and it taking forever? Of course you have. And you feel like you've wasted your whole day. So why do that? Because when you call Hiller, you don't have to camp out all day waiting. And again, I don't even call. I just go to happyhiller.com. I set up an appointment, and it's usually a 2-hour window, and they call you, and they say the guy's on the way, and you can pull up the map, and it's fabulous. Plus, be a happy camper this month with 0% interest financing for 24 months on select HVAC systems, generators, and tankless water heaters. Or take advantage of Hiller's $99 drain cleaning special. Take care of your home's systems before the peak summer temperatures hit, and visit happyhiller.com today for details. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. Hiller, call the Happy Face Truck today.
A lot of deals made in the first 10, 12 picks of the second round. How much action were you getting? How much consideration did you give?
Tons of calls. We up until when we walked up here at 4 o'clock with JC, we had about 8, 9 calls, 8, 9 offers for the pick, and we were fielding the calls, listening. But one thing we talked about was, let's see how this board shakes out. We knew there was going to be an early run on receivers, and we knew that with the defensive tackles that were right there, it was only a matter of time of when that run happened, and you knew that there was going to be a run on the corners right there. And so The receiver run happened early, like we thought, and then as soon as I think it was Washington traded into the pick and took Johnny Newton, we knew that run was going to happen, and it's just the way the board took shape.
It's probably important to note too that it's, just because there's phone calls doesn't mean that they're good deals. Doesn't mean that they fit for us. Some of these calls and some of these trades, you're dropping down a significant level of player when you start dropping deep into the second, and sometimes the reciprocal value isn't there because everyone thinks that they can try to pull one over and get a deal, and that's not how it works. So there's a cost of doing business, and when you want to come up that high, there's things that are required, and some teams meet it, some teams don't. But I think there was just a world of player that we weren't quite ready to dip out of.
Okay, the Titans' explanation for not trading back was, hey, there was a run on DTs. We knew it was coming. We were smart. We were right. And then, of course, there was the Rams' alleged GM buddy saying, I was going to pick that guy for whatever that's worth. And maybe it's the truth. Whatever. But there was a story in The Athletic, Jordan Rodrigue, who used to cover the Panthers. And she's been doing this for a while. She's been covering the Rams, I think, for a while. I really like her. She's a very solid journalist. But she did a piece on the Rams draft process in The Athletic that was just a wow. Like kind of an in-depth breakdown about how the Rams do things. And it's the kind of thing that if the Titans ever gave that level of transparency, instead of Chad Brinker going on a podcast and basically just saying that he's curing cancer with his football model, if they had this level of transparency that the Rams had with, an independent, real journalist, then I think you might, I might see things their way a little bit. But again, it was an insanely detailed piece about the Rams draft process, but there was one that went into their pick, which was one pick after the Titans, when they traded 52, next year's second, and a fifth to move up to 39 for Braden Fisk, the defensive tackle out of Florida State. And they write this, quote, in early April, the staff, talking about the Rams, held a series of meetings that argued for and against pods of defensive linemen and outside linebackers as potential tandems. Jared Verse, their first-round pick, and defensive tackle Braden Fisk, teammates at Florida State, were identified among those tandems as having a unique chemistry. If the Rams could get Verse, they would also go after Fisk. On Les Snead's call sheet, which again, like his own personal draft board, number 52, their second pick in the draft, was too far down to get any of the players who had more favorable evaluations. If they didn't get Verse at 19, they'd try to trade away from that zone. But if they had to trade up to get Verse, they probably wouldn't be able to trade up again to get Fisk. So what happened was the Rams said, if we can get Verse, we're going after Fisk. They got Verse. So then when the Rams called Carolina at 39, again, you picked at 38. When the Rams called Carolina at 39 and said, we'll make the biggest trade on day 2 of the draft over the last 6 years, which again was 52, a fifth, and next year's second in order to get Braden Fisk, they weren't interested in Tavondre Sweat. They were interested in Braden Fisk. So when Brian Callahan's sitting there telling people that just because there were phone calls doesn't mean there were good phone calls, I highly doubt the Titans didn't get the same offer that Carolina got. I mean, surely if they're trying to get Braden Fisk, they're picking up the phone, calling 38 and saying, hey, if our guy's there, will you make this move? If they're going to call 39. And again, they weren't interested in any DT. They were interested in their DT, which goes back to my free agency point. If you want to get a receiver, you can pay market value. If you want to get a specific receiver, you have to overpay. You want a specific player, you overpay. You want a player, you can pay market value. In this case, they wanted the specific player, Braden Fisk, because of how they thought his chemistry at Florida State paired up with Jared Verse. which again makes sense because the Rams are probably sitting there saying, okay, we're using our first round pick, our second round pick, and our second round pick next year to replace Aaron Donald. And we know we can't replace Aaron Donald with one guy, so it's going to cost us our first, our second, and our second. And that makes sense to me because of how important Aaron Donald is to them. Which takes me back to the question of the Titans. If the Rams weren't interested in T'Vondre Sweat, who's to say that everybody else would have been? If the Rams were interested in that one guy, then you can't use look at the run on the DTs. Because it wasn't like the Rams traded up to 39 because of the run on DTs. The Rams traded up to 39 because they wanted their specific DT. And then I have to ask this question. And this again is assuming that Rand's GM that texted him and said, we would have taken him. Losing T'Vondre Sweat. Again, T'Vondre Sweat is a risk in and of himself. Would it not have been worth the risk to have traded with the Rams, to have made the same trade Carolina did? To move off of 38, not get T'Vondre Sweat, but instead move down to 52, picked there, and gotten next year's second, and add in the fifth. I mean, I don't really care about that. Like, I didn't care about it when it came to the Kevin Byard trade, but go ahead and add it in there. It's another lottery chip in the fifth round. But next year's second, I mean, that's real value. So you could have made the trade and possibly taken T'Vondre Sweat because of all of his red flags. You could have possibly made the trade and gotten Sweat. And instead, you took Sweat and you're saying, no, we don't want next year's second. And I don't know if that was a good risk because, again, Sweat comes with all these risks himself. Let's say you move down to 52. Sweat's not there. You can still get a good player at 52. May not be the DT you wanted, but you can still get a good player at 52 if Sweat's not there. And you get a second next year. So would you rather have the good player at 52 and the second next year or Sweat? And then, on top of that, I think I would have taken the deal because if Sweat is there and I can take him at 52, I now have insurance in case Sweat goes off the reservation. Look, I took him at 52, but I also have a second next year. So if Sweat doesn't work out, I've got a little insurance here. As opposed to, well, we flew down and met with Mama and Grandma, and we're convinced that he's going to be a model citizen and keep his weight in check. But if the Rams were willing to make that move because they wanted that specific player at 39, which is exactly what the article says, they absolutely would have made that deal for 38. So Brian Callahan cannot finger wag us and tell us there weren't good trades to be made when, again, this is the best trade, the best day two trade over the last 6 years. You can't do it. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com, 615-737-1025, and a lot of you want to weigh in on this. 615-737-1025. Thomas in Hendersonville says, Jared, please stop quoting clickbait articles that you find from people like Adam Rittenberg, who not many of your fans have ever heard of. Ian, I think a lot of people who listen to this show have heard of Adam Rittenberg.
If you follow college football, sure.
I mean, he's like ESPN's number 3 college football guy.
Yeah.
I mean, this idea that he's some schmo at bullcrapsports.com is ridiculous. I don't care what he said about our team or our draft picks. He doesn't know anything about Tennessee. Well, it's not his opinion. It's what a Big 12 defensive coach said and what another Big 12 defensive coordinator said about Sweat. That one of them said that he does dumb stuff, although he didn't use the word stuff, and the other one said that his problem is that he might be a little too fat. So, if he gets that body in check, if he can ever get in shape, he'll be good. Well, good luck. I mean, come on now. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. More of your phones. We'll get to them next. Stillman and Company here on the program. Let's talk about Window Nation. This is a big time of the year for Window Nation. It's a Window Nation's semi-annual sale, and it is a big deal. Right now, get 50% off all windows along with no interest for 5 years. Plus, bonus savings when you schedule a consult today. I scheduled a consult at my home. Window Nation came out. They took a look at the windows. They said, your windows are good. You don't need new windows. And I was amazed because I'm sure these Window Nation people get paid by selling windows, and the fact that they were honest with me tells me about what a great company they are. If your windows leak, get foggy, hot, and you're paying high utility bills, that is a big deal, and that is a problem. With Window Nation's semi-annual sale, you can replace your windows and save a big deal, too. Schedule a no-obligation in-home estimate now by calling 866-90NATION or visiting windownation.com. Again, right now, get 50% off all windows on the semi-annual sale with no interest for 5 years. That's 866-90NATION, windownation.com.
So let's go to the next pick because you talk about another reach, but also a very talented player. We know about the DWI. What do you think of that? What did you hear about T'Vondre Sweat leading into the draft as a prospect and what people thought of him?
I was surprised by that pick, definitely, because it was, I think there were a couple of things prior to even the DWI. Well, there's one thing in particular. It was sort of, yes, he is a massive, run blocking defensive tackle who you can put in the middle of your schemes. Can be very difficult to move off the ball, but that's what he's going to be. I think the question was like, is he going to weigh 400 pounds by his, third year in the league? Like, is it always going to be like a weight and conditioning management issue with him. Is he going to be able to pass the fitness test at the beginning of camp? That kind of a thing. And, I think that concern was pretty consistent. And then and look, it's not that he didn't win. I do think conditioning was a big concern. That was prior to the DWI happening. I think the question then becomes like, you're right in the middle of this process, and then this happens. And I think that for some teams, I don't want to say he came off the board, but I think the teams that were looking at him saying, he's either a sub-board player for us, which means we set him to the side and we are not going to draft this guy until we think the risk and the reward intersect. And that's probably in like the 4th round. Whereas other teams, I think, maybe valued what he brought to the table a little bit more.
Some teams are like, yeah, no, we're not taking Devondre Sweat. The Titans are like, we know. We had to take him at 38. So, again, the two stories this hour we're discussing, one ESPN.com today, Adam Rittenberg talked to a Big 12 coach who said if Devondre Sweat if he can ever get in shape, he'll be good, which is, again, making the assumption that he is not in shape right now, which is a concern. And then a Big 12 coordinator saying, quote, there are some big question marks on him, not athletically, he's huge, but just doing dumb 4-letter word starts with S. Then there is the deep detail that the Rams allowed the Athletic into when it came to their draft plans, which was that the Rams plan, and this is why they traded with Carolina at 39, you were at 38, why they traded 2 seconds and a 5th in order to get to 39 was because they wanted to pair Jared Verse with Braden Fisk from Florida State. Kyle in Shelbyville says, the Titans don't have a crystal ball, Jared. How could they know the Rams wanted to pair Verse with Fisk? Says Kyle. Again, let's just use logical thinking here. If the Rams are going to call 39 and they're going to offer, again, the biggest day 2 trade, according to ESPN, over the last 6 years in terms of value, 2 second-round picks and a 5th-round pick for 39, don't you think they probably called 38? If you're going to call 39 because you're so obsessed with one player that you're going to offer a trade that you cannot refuse, and again, we're talking 2 seconds here, aren't you going to call 38? So if they didn't call 38, then that's even worse because it's like, oh, we know the Titans are going to take our guy. They're going to take somebody stupid. But my gut is the Rams probably called everybody that was in that range. If you're going to try that, if you're going to offer 2 seconds to move up in the second round, you're going to get a lot of people that are going to take your phone call. So when you're like, they don't have a crystal ball, and then another texter into the text line says that he thinks Adam Rittenberg is lying at the ESPN story about the Big 12 coordinator. Who are the coaches? Name them! I think you choose not to hear that. Not only that, Ian, how many different people off the record do we have to hear say the same thing over and over again before at least we kind of are allowed to believe that it's true?
It's a good question. Guess it depends who you ask.
How many people, we had 4 executives, NFL executives, say pretty much the exact same thing about Devondre Sweat in The Athletic last week. And now the Big 12 coaches are saying the same thing at ESPN.com today. At some point, don't you think it's kind of true? And so when you do that, to me, that's just deflecting. You just don't want to believe it. So it's like, oh, Adam Rittenberg, who's got no reason to lie, he's lying. One texter says, let's talk about how stupid the Rams are for making that trade. Trading next year's 2nd and a 5th to move up 14 spots just to get a teammate of Jared Verse. Well, let me say this. I like Jared Verse because in the ACC championship game when Louisville played Florida State, Jared Verse was the entire game. The pass rushers of Florida State. I watched no tape on Fisk and Verse and everything else and what they look like together. And the Rams already have the nose tackle that was, I think, 3rd or 4th in the Defensive Rookie of the Year voting that they took in, I think, like the 4th round last year. And they have Byron Young from Tennessee, who I think led rookie sackers last year, or tied with Will Anderson for it in the 3rd round. My gut is the Rams thought that those two together, the same way the Bengals thought Burrow and Chase together made each other so much better that it was worth the second round pick in order to move up to make sure that they got Fisk so that they could put Fisk with Verse. And to me, that is them replacing Aaron Donald. Instead of saying we're going to replace Aaron Donald with one guy and we draft Jared Verse at 19, they're saying we're going to replace Aaron Donald with two guys. And the two guys we've seen play together, and it makes sweet music. And that apparently, again, according to The Athletic and the story and the unprecedented access the Rams gave, this story was not about the Braden Fisk pick, by the way. This story was about the Rams' process. And I thought it was a very, very good process. You know, the way it was so detailed and everything else, that the Rams would not have been interested in Fisk had they not gotten Verse. Texture says, I am highly confident the Rams did not say what defensive tackle they were moving up for, even though in hindsight it was specific. You are playing Monday morning quarterback now that all the info is out, but at the time I'm sure the Titans didn't know which DT they were moving up to in order to get Sweat. Now, here's how this works. If the Rams call you and they say, hey, if our guy's there, if our guy's there with that pick, would you be interested? That's the question. And then they say, okay, yeah, you know, we'd be interested. If our guy's not there, give us a buzz, whatever. And I'm sure they always say, yeah, if our guy's not there, give us a buzz. They call, they say, okay, we want to make the trade. The Titans are allowed to say, who are you going to take? Like, they're allowed to ask. So if the Rams called and said, oh, we're not going to tell you, well, then you know you're not going to make that trade with the Titans. So for me, I have a hard time believing, like Brian Callahan said, that they didn't get good offers when the pick after them got the best offer. It's hard for me to think that the Titans didn't get that offer. One texter says, Jared, you are proving the Titans' point. If the Rams are so smart for wanting to trade up to get their guy, the Titans are just as smart for staying put to get their guy. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not talking about the Rams being smart. My point is that the Rams decided that, hey, we want these two guys together. So if we can get the first guy, then we're going to try to get the second guy. That makes sense. They did not trade up to draft Braden Fisk out of school. You know, if they had called, say, San Francisco and offered next year's one to take Braden Fisk at 31, that's different. They took Braden Fisk where Braden Fisk was projected to go and where, again, they had him on the board and they knew they couldn't be at 52 to take that guy. The Titans are telling everybody that they took Devondre Sweat where they had to take Devondre Sweat because of the run on DTs and that they knew somebody else was going to take him, which is convenient, but it doesn't make a ton of sense. Like it doesn't make a lot of sense when, again, he had all the red flags and the team that made the move up was going to go get another specific guy. Now, if you want to say, hey, the Titans took their guy and that was their guy no matter what, and that there's basically, in order to think the Titans did the right thing, you have to believe the Titans that A, there was no way they could trade into the 50s and get Devondre Sweat, which I'm not sure I believe, given the fact that, again, Charles Robinson, some teams just took him off the board. Those red flags, like the ones that you guys want to ignore, the Titans didn't ignore them because they flew all the way down to Texas to go over them. But, again, you're taking the risk that he's not there at 52 or into the 50s or that he is there in the 50s. But you're also getting the second next year. And the question is, do you take the second next year and run the risk, or do you go ahead and say, okay, we're going to do this deal and we're going to take Sweat because he's so much better than the second rounder next year? And I just don't think, given his red flags, I don't think there's any way you could possibly think that Sweat and his red flags are worth 38 and not the Rams second next year. I can't believe that. And that'll be the difference, one way or another. Is the who was right, who was wrong, and I love the Sweat player. People are going to say, oh, Jared, somebody doesn't love Sweat. I love the Sweat player. I just think the red flags are real, and so it makes me worry that if he's 400 pounds, he'll never get on the field. And I don't believe the convenient narratives that the Titans are pushing when they happen to be the same narratives that they said last year. Oh, they told us that Skoronski was our guy. We had 6 teams reach out to us and say that their coach wanted to take Colton Dowell, or we were going to take Colton Dowell in the 7th round. So it is what it is. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Since you guys get mad at anything Titan fans, or you Titan fans, get mad anytime somebody says anything negative about your team, I did decide to say, okay, let's see what the other executives around the league said about the AFC South teams. And we'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
I mean, I read some of the that was said on TV. I mean, just the typical, excuse my language, our typical league, unnamed sources, bad interview. That's such bullshit. It is. It's bullshit. Put your name on it. I'm tired of, we tear these young men down. These are 21, 22 young men. And if people out there can tell me they're perfect in their lives, it's crap. It's crap. This is a good kid. And, for those reports to come out, I said it last year. It's bullshit. I'm sorry. I apologize for the language. I don't, but I do.
I don't, but I do. Chris Ballard, the general manager of the Colts. And so I did wonder, we've looked at what all the executives had to say about the Titans drafts and things, which are J.C. Latham pretty good. I mean, probably went a little bit higher than I thought, but pretty good. And then Tavondre Sweat, it's like, if he can get to the church on time, that sermon's going to be pretty good. But there's a lot of question marks there. And every time we bring one of those up, people get mad because they only want to hear good things about their team. So I said, okay, what did they say about the other teams around the league? This is from Mike Sando in The Athletic. When it comes to Indy took the risks. Leatu Latu with the 15th overall pick in the draft. Leatu Latu is probably the best pass rusher in this draft. The problem is he had a neck injury at Washington in which they basically said you can never play football again. And then he transferred to UCLA. And after a surgery and something else, he was able to play again and was good. But there's a degenerative neck issue there. Leatu Latu probably goes at 6 in this draft if he doesn't have the neck issue, but he does. And then A.D. Mitchell, the report came out that he's got diabetes and that he's uncoachable when he doesn't manage his diabetes. And while, again, I've never met the kid and I haven't talked to his coaches or anything like that, I think it's kind of bullcrap too, push him down a little bit, and I guess it did. Here's what they said about Indy. Quote, an executive said, Indy has a pretty solid roster, but needed more difference makers. So this year they went away from what they've done in the past. They took risks with big upside. Leatu Latu has Joey Bosa-like hand usage and the best tape of any edge rusher in the draft. But the neck is a concern. A.D. Mitchell is as gifted as the top 3 wideouts even, but there were some concerns. On paper, though, Indy got tremendously better. Basically saying A.D. Mitchell has as much talent as Marvin Harrison, Malik Neighbors, Roma Dunze, and they got him in the 40s or the 50s or wherever they got him at because of the character concerns, which is a little surprising. Another executive says about the Colts, quote, it looks like they are thinking we have the coach, we have the quarterback, and we are out of excuses. I'm the biggest Anthony Richardson fan there ever was. I told you that if I was the Titans, I would have traded to get to number 3 last year to take Anthony Richardson because I believe in him that much. But the way that people talk about Anthony Richardson outside of here is like he's already done it in the league, and I think he's played like 7 games and got hurt twice. But I guess, we've got the quarterback, okay. Jacksonville drafted Brian Thomas Jr. in the first round. It kind of fell a little bit, and I think he's the perfect replacement for Calvin Ridley. The executives told The Athletic, quote, Thomas can be the guy in 2 years. I don't think he's going to be required to be that right away. They've got some guys talking about Christian Kirk and Gabe Davis, and There's going to have to be some development with him, another executive said of Thomas. He is not walking in there and transforming what they do. He has the physical traits to develop. Does he have the other stuff? That remains to be seen. So basically, Brian Thomas Jr. could be scary, but he's not there yet. And then Houston traded away their first-round pick in order to get 2 seconds from Minnesota. They dealt one of the seconds in next year's draft for Stephon Diggs, so they used the second-rounders on Kamari Lassiter out of Georgia, the corner, and Blake Fisher, the other tackle, out of Notre Dame. Quote, an executive said, the only issue there is I would have gone with Max Melton, chosen 43rd by Arizona, over Kamari Lassiter for his speed and ability to cover. Another executive said Lassiter ran slow, but his tape is really good. He was one of my favorite corners in the draft. Houston did a really good job overall of adding character with talent. Cade Stover, a tight end in the 3rd round of Ohio State, was a good example of that, and so was Lassiter. So they're saying, hey, we like what Houston's doing. Indy's taking big risks, and Jacksonville's guy could be good. I was a little surprised by that. I got to tell you, I've never met A.D. Mitchell. I haven't talked to Steve Sarkisian about A.D. Mitchell. I haven't talked to the strength coach about A.D. Mitchell. I haven't talked to Kirby Smart about A.D. Mitchell. And I'm sure a lot of these scouts and executives and coaches around the NFL probably have. And if A.D. Mitchell has that much talent, and I know A.D. Mitchell's got talent because I've watched him play college football. If A.D. Mitchell has that much talent, that it's literally Malik Neighbors level, which I don't agree with, but he is a dog. And he fell all the way down that far. It's hard to believe that there's not some truth to the rumors about him off the field. See, I thought it was just typical draft smearing that we hear. I thought it was a team like Carolina that wasn't picking until 33rd. Thought, A.D. Mitchell might be the 27th player in the draft. He might be the 25th player in the draft. Let's smear him, and he can go from 25 to 33. But he just fell and fell and fell and fell, which makes me think, when it comes to those red flags, the same red flags you guys don't want to admit to when it comes to your players, but it tells me that there's probably some truth there with A.D. Mitchell, which I did not believe going into the draft. Texter into the text line says, fans do not care about the media being negative. They always are. But they are annoyed at how negative you, talking about me, always are. I get the pessimistic attitude, but it gets stale. Guys, I was on social media this weekend, and I saw Titan fans talking about 10 and 11 wins. If you guys are going to be talking about 10 and 11 wins from now until kickoff, and the right tackle position doesn't improve, you are not going to like this show. Like, I'm just telling you right now. Like, I want to be wrong. I love the Titans. We talk about it every day. This show, and if you've looked at the ratings for this show lately, it tells you that people want to hear the truth. This show was the only show that didn't sit there with all the Vrabel and Rand Carthon drama and didn't say, oh, that's bull crap, that's not true, those passive-aggressive shots Vrabel's taking, those aren't real, no. We didn't listen to Diana Rossini when she came out on Thanksgiving and said Vrabel's not going anywhere. I told you right then and there. Diana probably got lied to. Why? Because the Titans lied about firing the last coach before Mike Vrabel. So why would I put it past them not to fire this one? Not to lie again. And there were a lot of people that didn't believe it. And there were a lot of people that were like, you're just stirring it up. You don't think you this. And then Vrabel got fired, and there were a lot of people that were like, oh, my God, he was right all along. And just like with Andre Dillard and Aaron Brewer and pretty much everything else, John Hines, there's a lot of times where you're like, I hate that Jarrett Stillman says these things I don't like. And then you're like, oh, my God, he was right, and I hate it that he was right. And it happens far too often that you people just don't want to admit to. I mean, I'm just going to keep it real. So when you're like, well, we don't like that you talk about T'Vondre Sweat's red flags, everybody else is talking about it. So, again, you can, I don't hear it, I don't know, hands over my ears, or you can live in reality. And I would tell you this right now. When it comes to T'Vondre Sweat, we'll see. If he shows up to training camp in shape, we'll see. And Brian Callahan can talk a tough game all he wants about, well, if he shows up out of shape, we'll fine him. Well, that's great, but if it's the third week of practice and he's not getting on the field because he's too fat, you're the one that's going to look stupid because you guys are the ones that vouch for him. And if everybody's wrong, everybody that is like, yo, man, the executive in the Athletic, the league executive that said he's going to break your heart, if that guy's wrong, then I think the Titans got a good football player. But I'm not going to assume they got a good football player when every single person, whether it's a college coach or a league executive, is talking about the same thing. And all you guys need to hear from your GM and coach is, oh, no, he flew down there. He's fine. Okay. 615-737-1025. So where do the Predators go from here? They will have a press conference tomorrow, Barry Trotz and Andrew Burnett. But to me, there's a number one place to start. And some people aren't going to like this. Most people probably will. We'll do that next. Caller 5. Let's give something away. Caller 5 at 615-737-1025. You want a pair of tickets to see Breaking Benjamin at F&M Bank Arena on May 15th. Good luck with that. Again, that's Breaking Benjamin at FM Bank Arena on May 15th. Stillman and Company, 1025-1063 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. So the Predators eliminated in 6 games. Friday night's game, they tried their hardest, but they can't score. And it was kind of the same story that we've had, for a while. That when it comes to the Predators in the playoffs, they just don't have the high-end forward play that it takes to win. That was a playoff series they should have won. They said it after the game. They know it. They know they should have won. They didn't. That being said, if they had won, they probably aren't going to get past Edmonton because Edmonton scores every time they go on the power play, and you converted 2 of your 1,000,000 chances against Vancouver. So forget about the Vancouver series. They should have won it. They didn't. I don't think Vancouver's all that great, and I don't know what's up with Pettersson, but that's yesterday's news. Today's news is, where do they go from here? Somebody texted in at the beginning of the hour when I teased this, and they said, we need a big boy forward, Jared. And you're right. But that's not the first step. The first step will be UC Saros. And I believe that it is time to trade UC Saros. I was okay with not trading Saros last year when they tried to move up to number 4 to take the Will Smith kid, and they put together that package of all those first rounders and Askarov and everything. I'm fine with that. Okay, trade Askarov, sign some, whatever. I was okay with not trading him at the deadline. They said, hey, we want an offer that knocks our socks off. Nothing knocked their socks off. That's fine. Go ahead. Keep the goalie. See where you go from here, knowing that you have the draft or next year's deadline in order to trade the goalie. But now, in my opinion, the Predators are at the point where it's time to make the decision. And it's time to trade the goalie. And there are 3 reasons why they need to trade the goalie. This has nothing to do with his ability. He is a fine goaltender. This has nothing to do with him as a person. He has been a model citizen. He's a good man, at least from every time I've been around him. This is not about Saros, but this is about the business and the reality of where the Predators are in the NHL. And there are 3 reasons why they should trade him, and in my opinion, there's 1 reason why they should keep him. The 3 reasons to trade him, number 1 is money. I think that a contract extension for Saros is probably going to be around $7.25. A lot of people are using, I think it's 8 that Hellebuck got. They're using the Hellebuck contract as kind of the benchmark for Saros, but I don't think Saros is as accomplished as Hellebuck, and Saros hasn't won as much in the playoffs as Hellebuck, and Hellebuck's not winning in the playoffs, so why would you want to necessarily roll with that contract? So I'd say Saros will come in at about $7.25. That is a significant cap hit for 5 years. Maybe 6. $5 million next year, and then the $7.25 for the next 4 or 5 years when he signs that new deal. And Saros will probably want a no move in the deal. So ask yourself this. Wouldn't you be better from a cap standpoint of paying Askarov $950,000 and Lankinen, re-signing him for $2.5 million, and then you would save, $3 million this year and $5 million next year and for the years after that? So money's the first reason. He's just going to want too much of it, and you're not winning with him, so why would you pay him more?
It's 8.5 for Hellebuck, just as a reference for everyone.
So maybe more like 7.5 for Saros, but I don't think Saros is cracking 8. Number 2, Askarov. That's the second reason to trade Saros. The Predators didn't use, I assume, the Predators didn't use the 11th overall pick in 2020 to draft a player that they plan on spending his entire contract at Milwaukee, right? Now, is he ready to dominate in the NHL? Probably not. But neither was Connor Bedard, and Chicago still played him. He wasn't perfectly ready to play right away, but he played. So what's the point of having Askarov on the team if you're going to re-sign Saros? And what would be the point 4 years ago of drafting Askarov with the 11th overall pick if you were never going to play him? And I know, again, it's a different administration, but still. You've got a young goaltender who's big, which Saros is not, and has the potential to be great, which again, Saros is not. He's good, he's not great. So at some point, that gives you the ability to move off of Saros. And then the third thing is this. There is a lack of correlation in today's NHL between goaltending and playoff success. Vegas won the Cup last year without a goalie. Colorado won it the year before without a goalie. Winnipeg got crushed by Colorado with Connor Hellebuck making, again, as Ian just said, $8.5 million. So we have to think about it like this. An extension for UC Saros would cost the Predators probably either one really good skater. Think of a Sam Reinhart. What's he going to get on the free agent market? Probably somewhere around $8.5, $9 million. Or two solid skaters. And they already have his replacement and a solid bridge option if they want to re-sign Kevin Lankinen. So a lot of times in life, major decisions are made for you. And in this case, I think it's been made for the Predators. It's time to trade UC Saros. You don't win with him in the lineup. He's going to cost you more money on his next contract. You already drafted his replacement, and his replacement is at Milwaukee and is ready for NHL games, and you've already got a guy, if you want to extend him, if not, go sign Cam Talbot. But you've got a guy that you can put in the net next year and say, okay, Ascarov's going to play 1A and Lankinen's going to be 1B, and we're going to ease Askarov in there. But the decision, in my opinion, has been made for you because you can't win with Saros. And you need the money that you're going to pay Saros, and you need to invest that in offense. Now, as far as the return, when it comes to UC Saros, it's not going to be as high as a lot of people probably want. Again, Barry Trotz was talking around the deadline of, you want my goaltender, you got to knock my freaking socks off. It's probably not going to be that. My guess would be you're probably looking at a first-round pick and a mid-level prospect. A prospect at the level of Philip Tomasino. A guy that was a former first-round pick that has some promise but hasn't really done it yet in the NHL. Kind of like when you acquired Cody Glass. That's probably what you're looking at when you trade Saros. And that's fine. Because, again, this doesn't have anything to do with Saros. It has everything to do with the business. And it's time to move on. So to me, that's the first step, and I think they have to do it before the draft. And I think they have to do it before the draft because if they don't, then they'll go into next season with Saros on the team. And if they go into next season with Saros on the team, they're going to win enough games that when it gets to deadline time, they're going to say, oh, we can't trade Saros. And now they're up a creek. So, again, season's over. Not happy it's over. I love that team. It was incredibly fun to watch them play. The way that they came together, the way they played the game, the way they went on that heater. It was fun this year. I enjoyed it. I respect the hell out of that team. I think they got the right coach. I think they got the right GM. But the next question is, where do you go from here? And for me, it starts with trading the goalie. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. A lot of you want to weigh in on this. So we will get to that. Plus, I have had a theory. I've talked oftentimes about how I have anxiety, and I'd say right now in my life I got a lot of it. I have anxiety just like a lot of you do about the inability to get a big boy forward. Like, could they actually do it? They'll never pick first. Could they actually get it right and acquire a big boy forward? Well, I do think that there will be an answer, that there will be a way without picking first. But it's about making the right choice. And there's one that may be hitting the market that I don't know. We'll get to that coming up next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
But I think they sent a message this year that, as Anthony Stewart says, as his father always used to say, are you a team or are you a club? And the Predators showed this year that they were a team, and I would expect them to continue to grow. The guy I think is going to be really interesting to watch next year is Novak. I think he's a really talented guy. I think he struggled in the playoffs this year. I think in the long run, that will make him a better player, a greater understanding of what that is. But you look at all their players, like, Evangelista got that experience. Parsonen got the last game. And I know it was a little bit of a disappointing year for him, but you don't give up on those guys too early. The interesting decision will be Carrier. What do they decide to do here? I don't think they had talked that much post deadline, but they've got a decision to make there. And he played really hard in the playoffs. I thought he was a good part of their team.
That was Elliot Friedman. Man, he loves pumping the tires of Tommy Novak. I think Tommy Novak sucks. I went into this series and I was like, I'm worried about Tommy Novak being able to hang with these big boys. And now I'm no longer worried. I'm convinced he cannot. But that's a different discussion. So again, you ain't going to get far if you're banking on Parsonen and Tommy Novak. I'm sorry, it's reality. But I think they know that. I have long held the theory that I believe the answer to the great hunt for the big boy forward will one day present itself, even if people like me with anxiety want the answer today. Now, there is a name, Mitch Marner, that has come out that may be the answer to that. I say maybe. I don't know. I'm not suggesting that I think it is. One texter texted in and said, what about Saros for Marner? Who would say no? You'd need more than that for Marner. But I do think Toronto's going to trade Mitch Marner. If Marner lets out with a no movement clause, and it's so toxic there, I can't see him coming back. Marner is a $10 million right winger, which means that he could seamlessly fit with Forsberg's line, or you could play him down a line, move Evangelista up, whatever you want to do. And Marner reminds me a lot of Matt Duchene, because Matt Duchene was a high pick. Matt Duchene had made some all-star teams. Matt Duchene was a big name. And Matt Duchene didn't necessarily have the stats that said superstar, but there was just enough there that if you wanted to convince yourself that Matt Duchene was a superstar, you could, and the Predators did. Now, throughout their first 8 years in the NHL, Marner has scored 20 more goals than Duchene and has piled up 200 more assists. So I'd say that Marner is better than Duchene, but it's, again, to me, it's the same kind of like, is he really a star, or are we talking ourselves into a star here? My problem with Marner is that he's not a great goal scorer. He averages about 30 a year, and not only that, he seems to apparently disappear in the playoffs. And things seem to have run their course in Toronto with Marner. But Marner's just the first name that's going to come out of these playoffs, and there's going to be more where it's like the team doesn't like this guy, or the player doesn't like this team, or he wants a contract and he can't get it, so he demands a trade, or he wants to play with so-and-so, or whatever. Right now, the two names that are out there, I'm not going to throw Stamkos out there because I think Stamkos is more of a kind of like a Ryan O'Reilly signing, which is he used to be really, really good. Now he's just kind of good. But the two names out there are Sam Reinhart, who had 50 goals this year for Florida, and who I think is probably what the Predators thought they were getting in Duchene when they signed Duchene, because Reinhart puts the puck in the net and is a good player, and Marner. But there's going to be a huge market for Reinhart. And Marner's got a no move. And again, with Marner, it's like, how good is he really? And how much of a crybaby is he? Because that's a big problem in Toronto. Well, Sheldon Keefe came out one day and said, yeah, we need a little bit more from him. And he threw a huge temper tantrum. Like, can Barry Trotz sit him down and get him to not act that way? I'm skeptical. One texter says, Marner is an overrated punk. Another texter says, no. He is a lazy bum. Talking about Marner. Which, again, brings me back to my comparison for Mitch Marner, which is Matt Duchene. Like, my comparison to Mitch Marner is Matt Duchene. Now, Marner, again, 200 more assists over 8 years, that is not nothing. But the problem with Matt Duchene, when Matt Duchene was here, was that Matt Duchene was paid all this money to produce, and he didn't really do it. And on top of it, he was not a leader. He was, as we call him, a losing player. They fired Matt Duchene. Nobody wanted him. They tried to trade him. They tried to do the Joe Hansen thing. Let's trade you, retain some of your contract. You take some of the contract. You don't even have to give us anything in return. We just want to get this guy off our team. And everybody around the league was like, nah, we're good. So they fired him. And I do think that there is some Duchene inside of Marner. And when it comes to Marner, in order to waive his no movement clause, you're going to have to give him an extension, and it's going to have to be like an 8-year, $11 million a year contract. So I'm skeptical. But again, Marner's not the only guy that's going to be out there. Reinhart is not the only guy that is going to be out there. So just keep in mind that there's going to be, and then you have to make the right choice. David Poyle missed in 2 consecutive years, 3 if you want to count Granlund, but I'm not going to. In 2 consecutive years, David Poyle missed. When David Poyle went after Turris, and then he went after Duchene. You can't miss like that. Barry Trotz misses in the same way, Barry Trotz will get fired. So whenever one of these guys, is out there, like Matthew Tkachuk was, or like Jack Eichel was, the Eichel thing could have blown up in Vegas's face. He was having that experimental neck surgery, and he and Buffalo weren't seeing eye to eye, and Vegas made the trade, and there's a chance that Eichel could have never recovered from the neck surgery. But they took the swing, and it worked. Matthew from Jolton says, Saros, Tampa Bay's first and Novak for Leon Draisaitl. Please. Why don't you just go ahead and, if we're all making that kind of trade, let's offer Fabro too, see if they'll take that. They're not trading you Leon Draisaitl. That's the thing. The guys that there's not a question about, and again, Marner's got serious questions. The guys that there aren't questions about, you probably can't get. I mean, even I heard Willie talking about J.T. Miller, saying that J.T. Miller had some questions around him when he was, Tampa Bay and New York, and it was like, and then he finally came out of his shell in Vancouver. That's the kind of player. Now, he's not a big boy forward. He's really, really good. But that's the kind of player that I'd like to have on this team. Glenn says if he's only a 30-a-year scorer, then no, in reference to Mitch Marner. Again, throughout the first 8 years of their careers, he scored 20 more goals than Duchene, which is not nothing, but has 200 more assists, which means he's creating a lot, and he plays on a team with Austin Matthews. But I'm not the only way I could do this, the only way that I could do the Marner deal, where I trade assets, and I think a deal for Marner is probably, he has to want to use his no movement clause, but Saros, a first, a second, one of those 3 seconds you have. Svechkov. That's probably what it takes.
The big issue with Marner is he's only got 1 more year.
Well, you have to. I mean, he's not moving. He's not waiving the no movement if you don't sign him.
I mean, you have to. It's like one of those things. You got to sign him to a big deal.
It's going to be 8 by 11.
And you're kind of. Don't want to say stuck, but you're making your commitment.
Oh no, you're fired. If this doesn't work, you're fired. And you guys know I love Barry. I mean, I love Barry Trotz. I think Barry Trotz is a great general manager. I think Barry Trotz has done a great job. And again, with Marner, I'm not a humongous fan. I think he's really, really talented. But I worry about all this, sideshow stuff going on in Toronto. But if Barry Trotz is convinced of it, I'm I will accept it and be okay with it because Barry, to me, after this past year, has earned the benefit of the doubt. But that being said, if you make this move and you end up giving him, he's not moving the no movement clause. If you don't give him a new deal, you're looking at 8 by 11. If you do that and it doesn't work, you're fired.
He's already making 10-9. So, yeah, it's going to be expensive.
It's going to be a lot. And again, I'm thinking it's probably 8 by 11 is what you're looking at here. So keep that in mind. Now, the only way you could convince me, Jared, we got to make that trade, is if somehow you knew him, right? Like you had an assistant coach that knew him. You've got an assistant general manager that was with him in Toronto. You've got and I don't know, all the Andrew Burnett hires. I don't know. His guy is Derek McKenzie, right?
I think that's right.
I don't know what his background is as far as where he's from. But like if one of those guys coached him in Toronto, has been around him, and is like, Jared, I swear to you, Toronto's the problem, Keefe's the problem, Dubas was the problem, the media in Toronto was the problem, Matthews was the problem. If that was the case. Now, here, who might be the guy that...
The Florida guy.
Well, I'm thinking about...
Are you talking coaches?
I'm talking about where Barry could probably get the intel on whether or not to do this.
What you thinking?
Well, Barry wasn't there when John Tavares was there. I was thinking Tavares from the Islanders, but
maybe some carryover.
Barry wasn't there, though.
Well, my first thought was, Reinhardt on Florida. That is...
Oh, yeah, with Burnett?
With Burnett and McKenzie. They do know him. That kind of works, but I'm not sure about any Toronto connections.
Steven says, I know the boo-hoo Barry Trotz crew doesn't want to hear this, but the Predators are a mess and they should have dealt him at the deadline. I don't think they're a mess. I mean, again, who knows what they were getting offered as part of the deal? For Saros when he was out there. My guess is it was probably a first and a little bit of something else. This idea that it was Dawson Mercer, I think if they had offered it, or Quentin Byfield or whatever, if they had offered those players, like that would have been it. And they would have done the deal. So I don't think they were getting offered a whole lot. Again, I think they'll get a first and a mid-level prospect. And so, okay, maybe they would have gotten another pick on top of that, and that's what you sacrificed to quote-unquote see. And I can live with that. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. 615-737-1025. Another texter says that Ryan O'Reilly played with Mitch Marner last year in Toronto.
That's true.
That, I didn't think about that. That is...
Shen might have, too. I think Shen was in Toronto.
There may be something to this that, again, if those guys... Now, I'd much rather trust a coach's opinion than trust the player's opinion, but I do think O'Reilly and Shen have been around long enough that... And they know. I talk about this whole, Tavondre Sweat thing about, Jeffrey Simmons, he'll get him right. And I'm like... That's not his job. And while I know that O'Reilly and Shen's job is to play hockey, those guys were brought in for what they were in the locker room. That was a big deal to Trotz of we're bringing you in and we're overpaying you because of what we value you to the locker room. So when it comes to, hey, what do you think about Marner? That may go a long way with those guys because they've got the experience and that kind of thing. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025 if you want to weigh in on the program. Coming up next here on the program, there was a guy a lot of Titan fans wanted, and he is off the market. We'll get to that next. Stillman & Company 102, and I've got some info on it. We'll get to that next. Stillman & Company 102.5, 106 for the game.
Is your starting right tackle on the roster right now? Is your starting left tackle in the draft?
We'll answer draft questions at a later date because, again, this is more about free agency. And to say is our starting right tackle, we got more than 5 offensive linemen on the roster, so we can roll out any 5 and call them starters if you want to at this point. But we're going to, like I just told TD, we're going to continue to look to bolster up front. We've added weapons around Will. Still got to be able to protect him. Got 2 good backs out of backfield that can make explosive plays. So we want to continue to balance this thing out, and make this a balanced football team.
That was Rand Carthon when they signed L'Jarius Sneed saying, well, we're not going to worry about the draft, but hey, we got 5 guys we can put on the line and call them starters. Let's roll, baby! Oh, God. You guys get mad at me when I point out that Rand Carthon does things or says things that John Robinson did because you guys think Rand's great and John sucks. I will never forget the 2022 training camp. When they just let Roger Saffold go and didn't replace him, and they let Quessenberry go and they didn't replace him, and John Robinson at the start of training camp was like, yeah, we'll just get 5 guys out there. We'll just put the 5 best out there. I'm like, oh, God. Because, of course, where I come from, you need a right tackle. So Andrus Peat was a target Titan fans were very hopeful for. He came in on a visit and during free agency, and there was a thought that, he could come in here and he could be one of the tackles, and you could draft the tackle and you could have Pete and the other tackle, and that would be much, much better than, say, rolling with Nicholas Petit-Frere, a.k.a.
PT.
Because PT stinks. And yet, after the draft, there was a thought, hey, maybe they end up waiting until after the draft, see what they do at tackle, and then maybe they circle back at Andrus Peat. And again, Andrus Peat's kind of a left side of the line player, but maybe we'll see what he can do and go from there. And from what I understand, the Titans had no interest in Andrus Peat. They brought him in for a visit, and nothing came of it. Considering that the Titans are focused more on the 3rd wide receiver spot by bringing in Tyler Boyd and now Zay Jones, it's obvious to me that the Titans think Nicholas Petit-Frere, a.k.a. PT, is going to play right tackle. And that's great, except for one really, really big problem. And that is that PT sucks. And I will say this every day until the start of training camp, until we start playing games, that objectively there is no reason to go into the season with him as the starting right tackle because he is bad. And yet, the Titans are going to try. Again, PT graded out on Pro Football Focus at 52.3, which is bad. He allowed pressures on 7% of his pass block snaps, and last year he was 35.5. Now look, Andrus Peat was not perfect either. But think about it this way. PT allowed more sacks in parts of 3 games last year than Andrus Peat did in 715 snaps at left tackle. And again, that is a position that he really hasn't played much of late, but he had to because Trevor Penning, a first-round pick, was so bad. We saw it with Arden Key in that first game that the Titans were like, oh, wow, Arden Key. We thought that Arden Key was the truth after that game. The Saints were like, okay, you're playing left tackle now because the other guy sucks so bad. And the Titans are going with Nicholas Petit-Frere. And I'll be completely frank with you. Not that I think that he'd be any good at it, but I just think there might be a chance that Brunskill might be a better right tackle than PT. And so I know, well, Bill Callahan's coaching him, Jared, and I trust Bill Callahan. I know. Bill Callahan made the pick, and Bill Callahan is the smartest guy ever, which is why all of his teams outside of the team he inherited for John Gruden for the first year, all of his teams he's ever coached, whether it was the Raiders or Nebraska, have sucked. I know. Bill Callahan's got all the answers. Except for when he was in Cleveland, They drafted him a tackle the way they drafted him a tackle here. And they signed him a tackle in free agency in Jack Conklin. Now, you and I both know, no matter how good of an offensive line coach Bill Callahan is, he ain't turning PT into Jack Conklin. You know it. But for the Titans to have no interest in Andrus Peat, again, signals to me that they're probably true. But when I listen to you guys talk about how smart the Titans are, even though they didn't win any games last year, that's Vrabel's fault. That's John Robinson's fault when I listen to you guys talk. When I hear you guys talk about how smart the Titans are, I never hear the, well, you know, it's okay that they're doing things that the last administration did that we didn't like. But that's what they're doing. Taking guys with red flags, drafting guys and moving them in positions. Like, you can bitch about me all you want. L'Jarius Sneed's knees are a concern. They're a concern for everybody else. Just like Caleb Farley's back was a concern for everybody else. Just like Julio Jones' hamstring was a concern for everybody else. Well, right now, the Titans are going to put at right tackle the same guys that got John Robinson fired. Same guys that got Mike Vrabel fired. One texter into the text line sends in a giant long text and says, I did a little fact checking on the right tackle story. If you talked to Floyd for the first time before the first show together in April of 2015, you asked him, Floyd, are the Titans going to be any good this year? It would have at least been a week or two before the Titans signed Byron Bell. So they indeed did not have a right tackle. Also, Byron Bell's last gig was as a depth player for the Cowboys. He was old, injury-prone, and nowhere near as good as the right tackle options we have now. Whoa. Ian, you remember Byron Bell vaguely, right?
A little bit, yeah. I think he got hurt.
Would you say that Byron Bell is nowhere near the right tackle options they have right now? Or would you say that Byron Bell is exactly where the right tackle options they have now is?
I'd say they're pretty close.
I think it's the same thing.
Yeah, I don't think Byron Bell was overly special.
Texture says in 2015 he played left guard and right tackle alternatively and was awful. That's not true. He played left guard. No, he played right guard. I believe Levitri played left guard. He played right guard. And then the day Ken Wisenhunt got fired, Mike Mularkey took over and said, no, you're moving to right tackle because they put Jeremiah Patasi, a third-round guard, at tackle to start the season. Because Wisenhunt was a moron.
Well, I know the Jeremiah Patasi situation was terrible.
Terrible. It was terrible. So bad that Floyd said, if we go down to Houston and JJ takes over the game, someone ought to be fired. And they went down to Houston, and I think Watt had 4 sacks, and they fired Wisenhunt the next day. And so, again, as soon as Mularkey got the job, he was like, enough of this crap bum. In goes Byron Bell. And Byron Bell was a backup. You know, again, he's like what you have right now. But, again, I don't know if they signed Byron Bell after the draft, before the draft, or whatever. But I am telling you, Floyd has been on record saying that 2015 Titans team was the worst collection of talent he had ever seen in 40 years of following the NFL. So when I hear, and again, he continues saying, I still think the Titans need better players for right tackle and right guard, but the situation is not even close to the situation Floyd talked about in 2014. Back then, 15, they literally had no right tackle. Keep it honest, my friend.
They signed Byron Bell in April.
So Floyd and I's first show together, the day of the right tackle story, I'm going to pull up an April of 2015 calendar because I think I know exactly what day it was. It was in between games 4 and 5, or maybe 3 and 4 of the Predators and the Blackhawks.
It looks like it was 16?
No, they signed Byron Bell. 15 was
yeah,
Byron
April
Bell.
2015.
Okay, so the right tackle story, I believe, was on April 24th of 2015.
He signed April 22nd.
Okay, screw you, Texter. Still not a right tackle. When was the long overtime game for the Predators against
San Jose?
Because I know I was doing it because George Plaster was on vacation. Willie was with the Predators. No, this was during the Chicago series that they blew.
I was going to say the San Jose series.
No, that was 16.
Yeah.
So, whatever. It was after they signed Byron Bell. Hush. 615-737-1025. Twice daily. I love Twice Daily. Twice Daily has all your cravings, and you can save on every visit. Stop in and get rewarded, and all you need to do is join the Twice Daily Rewards program to unlock special discount savings, enter their sweepstakes, and so much more. Try their new wraps, Italian, ham and cheddar, turkey and Swiss, and Nashville hot chicken. They are made to order with your favorite toppings, and when you download that Twice Daily app, you can order ahead. Or at Twice Daily, it's snack time all the time. They've got favorites like chicken fingers, tater rounds, and new pretzels. Twice Daily. What are you craving?
The NFL spent $20 million and found that it was more probable than not that I was generally aware that someone may have deflated my footballs. You could have just given me the $20 million, and I would just told you I did it.
That was Tom Brady last night on the roast of Tom Brady. And I got to tell you, the roast, if you have not watched it and you have Netflix, you have got to watch the roast of Tom Brady. It was incredible. Gronk, although Gronk kind of sucked. Gronk, Edelman, Randy Moss, Bledsoe, Belichick, Peyton. I mean, they brought out all the stars. Ben Affleck was terrible. The Netflix comedians that were out there were hilarious. Kim freaking Kardashian was awesome. Kraft was great. I mean, the roast of Tom Brady, it was fabulous. Incredibly well done by Netflix. Now, when Brady got up there and was roasting on everybody, I mean, he threw a zinger, by the way, at Kim Kardashian. I mean, I don't want to give away all the jokes, but it was fabulous. But the one thing a lot of people are talking about is that, hey, for $20 million, I would have just told him I did it when it comes to Deflategate. I was on Twitter today, and Adam Schefter put up there you go. And I thought, oh, my God, you freaking dweebs. And, of course, the internet was like, did Tom Brady admit to Deflategate? Guys, it was a joke. The whole night was a joke. What Peyton said was a joke. What Bill said was a joke. What all the Netflix comedians said, they were jokes. Now, again, with the roast, well, I mean, I would say with like any joke, there's a little truth in it, and that's what makes it funny. But, I mean, this was the real hardcore. To me, this was again, I was shocked. As soon as it started with, they say, oh, it's the roast of Tom Brady and Kevin Hart's going to host it and Bill Belichick's going to be involved. And it's like, okay, they say nothing is off the table, but is really nothing off the table? Now that one guy, I'm forgetting, is it Jeff Ross? Is that it?
Yeah.
Now when he made a joke about crafting the massages, Brady got kind of mad and got up there and said, hey, don't do that again. Now, that was the one thing that Brady was like.
Ross might be the most ruthless of them all.
Oh, no. He was not as ruthless as there was this woman, Nikki, this blonde woman. She was pretty ruthless. And then Sam J. Mm-hmm. I mean, she was freaking ruthless. And then the Kill Tony guy. I don't even know these Netflix comedians' names. They were ruthless last night. But, I mean, again, I knew right off the first guest roaster, like the first non-comedian roaster. And I'm sure these guys, had joke writers that helped him out, was Drew Bledsoe. And when Drew Bledsoe started making cracks about Randy Moss, and they were racial cracks, I was like, okay, this is going to the end zone here. Like, normally it's like, okay, let the Netflix people, the comedians do the comedian stuff, and, Bledsoe and Moss and Edelman, they'll throw some zingers. No. But they went all in. But again, it was a joke. And it's okay to joke. And I know in our cancel culture society, which I don't really believe in cancel culture, but I believe that, some people get offended by everything. Like, sometimes you guys got to learn how to take a joke. And so when Tom Brady made that joke, I laughed, and I was like, that's a good joke. I didn't think, oh, see, he underinflated the footballs. Now, I thought he kind of did that anyways, but I definitely wasn't, oh, no, see, oh, my goodness. It was a joke. That's it. Just a joke. By the way, the roast is great here on the program. That'll do it for us. We're out of here today. Stillman and Company, the Commodore Hour, Vandy Baseball. I mean, they got to get it together. I'm sure they will discuss that. That's next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.